Hey everybody, right before the show, wanted to let you know we have an update to our Patreon. A brand new monthly movie podcast is available now for $10 and up patrons at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. You want to hear me and Bob talk all about Mask of the Phantasm, the best Batman movie of all time? You can hear all about that in our long, almost 3 hours long podcast, patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
Cartoons from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we travel through time and are tough on crime. I'm your host, 4 Angry Geese in a podcaster costume, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and listen to this podcast or you're fired!
And who do we have on the line?
We've got Toby Jones here.
I didn't know we were doing impressions or anything, so I am Owen, and I will say dude.
That's something they say on regular show.
They say dude a lot on regular show, yeah.
I had no idea. And speaking of regular show, today's episode is the regular show episode, Brilliant Century Duck Crisis Special.
Everything seemed perfectly normal for our heroes. Just another ordinary day at the park. Until...
So we're doing regular show for What a Cartoon, and our two special guests are two people that worked on not just this series, but the cartoon we're talking about today, Toby Jones and Owen Dennis. Hello, guys. What's up?
Hi.
Hello. Happy Tuesday evening.
And Happy New Year to our listeners too, because this is our first podcast of the new year. And,
wow.
And this is a big one for us.
Here in the new year. I love it here.
This is a major one for us on What a Cartoon. We've never done a What a Cartoon where the guests did the episode we're doing. So
happy to be.
We're gonna dig deep.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be potentially biased. But I would be surprised if you didn't like the episode.
That would be very odd.
You're not going to like to hear all the jokes I think that suck in it. No, I love this episode. Listeners of Talking Simpsons should know you, Toby. You've been on 2 of our episodes, but for folks who don't know, for both of you guys, like what's your backgrounds?
The basic career background is that I started as a writer and storyboard artist on a regular show. I was on that for about 4 years, about 5 seasons, and then I went on to, I'm currently executive producer on OKKO Let's Be Heroes at Cartoon Network.
I was also on regular show for, I don't know, same
amount of time, because you're on after I left.
I was one after you. On regular show for same amount of time. Then I was on Close Enough for a little bit, and then I was on Infinity Train, which is a show that I created, I guess.
You are the creator of Infinity Train.
Yeah, thank you. I'm the creator of Infinity Train, a television show on Cartoon Network.
I was just watching that pilot with my husband last night, and every corgi joke, especially, I just love.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very Those are just my corgi that I grew up with. That's just everything it was.
And the show makes the pilot look like shit.
I can't wait.
We're wrong to like the pilot.
How dare you express enthusiasm?
You're really going to regret liking the pilot once you see the show.
I feel like an idiot.
Well, so regular show is such an interesting series. It's one of the Cartoon Network's like resurgence ones or new renaissance, whatever bronze age of the Cartoon Network you want to call it. Like it really defined it. It and Adventure Time, I think, were huge game changers for Cartoon Network, right, Bob?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I would define it like this, but a lot of people point to the Adventures of Flapjack as sort of the main like catalyst for all of these creators to go off and, you know, work on their own projects, and creators from those shows would go off and work on their own projects. And it all kind of started in the late 2000s, and regular show is very much part of that too.
Yeah, basically it's like, it feels like Flapjack and Chowder kind of started this next wave of animation, but it was Adventure Time and regular show that kind of broke into the mainstream, like wider culture. I mean, I love Flapjack and Chowder.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah, like I remember I was watching, I was an obsessive Adventure Time fan. I watched the pilot when it came out, and then regular show too. I watched the pilot when that leaked online, along with like the Uncle Grandpa pilot. Yeah, I remember watching them every single week, being like, "Wow, finally cartoons are this good. This is amazing. These are better than everything I grew up with. I love these cartoons so much." I was miserable, and I was working post-college jobs, and I was like, "Well, I have this one positive thing in my life of watching these cartoons every week."
I was fine. I had the same thing. I remember like when the Adventure Time pilot came out, I was like, I need to show this to everybody that I know. And it was like that was like one of the early, like, hey, there's a video online that's spreading around.
Yeah.
And like now it became a TV show. Like that was a whole new
and that the show
had been done before.
And that the show was like better than the pilot, and it just continued to grow and become more interesting. And regular show, like I didn't even necessarily get it at first. Like it took a couple episodes for me to kind of clue in, like, oh, this thing has kind of like a alternative comics vibe to it that has a really unique perspective. And of course, that's how I ended up getting brought onto the show through comics. And so it kind of has its own angle, I guess.
I mean, one of the things that we've talked about, one of the things that we related to about it and really liked about it was that it was like one of the early kids cartoons to be like, here's what an adult relationship is like.
Yeah.
But you can show it to kids and it's okay. Mm-hmm. Like other things, it's always like, oh, I got a crush on it. It's like a very small child relationships, but this was adults having adult relationships, and like that hadn't really been done before.
Certainly not in this way.
No.
The adultness of it set in for me when I saw like the first time they talked about a roommate, or one person has a car and drives places. Like,
and like, but when you're a kid, you love that stuff. I mean, that's why I love Rocko's Modern Life, because like, you want to learn about what's the next phase of your life is. And I think that's why, the show spoke to so many people.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Rocko. I'm glad that you brought it up, because I think it might be rude to tell a creator, your show reminds me of that other show. But I think...
Well, no, JG's a Rocko fan, and he worked on Camp Laszlo.
That's great, yeah. But I feel like we had Rocko, and kids, that were kids 10 years ago had regular show as their like kind of fun, cartoony look into adult life, or at least people pretending to be adults.
Yeah. I think that's a fair comparison, especially when it comes to that.
I was kind of a late bloomer to regular show myself, because there was a time in the 2000s where I saw trailers or previews. I don't want to put too much negativity on some old Cartoon Network shows, but there were some trailers for Cartoon Network shows that did not interest me. And I kind of just didn't give shows on the network a chance for a while. I didn't watch Flapjack. I didn't watch Chowder. Even though I loved the pilot for Adventure Time, I didn't really even give Adventure Time much time. It really wasn't until the 2013 premiere of Steven Universe, and a coworker of mine said, you have to watch Steven Universe. It's the best. And when I got it on Steven Universe, basically by episode 5, that's when it clicked for me, like, oh, wait, this show is great. And now I'm realizing all these shows that came before it that are connected to it are also amazing, and I need to start watching them. Mm-hmm. That's where regular show came into my viewing, which that was pretty nice to get into regular show in like late 2015, because it's like I have 200 episodes to watch.
You had it was before it ended, but you had like the majority of the run just on hand to kind of catch up on. That must have been really fun.
It was.
Yeah, and for our listeners, it's all on Hulu now. So if you're listening to this, you can watch all of it, including the episode that we're talking about today.
Which is also just like the first season of OKKO, which everybody should be watching. I'm mad none of people watch that.
OKKO is great.
I agree with all of you about that.
Well, Bob, you were a similar late starter to regular show.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, I did watch Chowder and Flapjack because my friends were watching it. My friends still had cable, so I would watch those shows with them. But then after those shows ended, I just was sort of out of the loop for 5 years. I don't know what I was doing. Maybe I thought I was too good for cable TV, but it wasn't until like around 2015 when I started rediscovering all these shows that I missed and being sad that I had missed the beginnings of all of these shows I would have enjoyed earlier in my life if I wasn't, in that headspace I was earlier. Who knows what I was doing or thinking, but now I'm happy. They're all, most of these things are streaming, and most of these things from this era are available to watch, and they're really great. And I think I feel like it started with regular show, and Flapjack and Chowder is now just what Cartoon Network does, and they influence Disney to do better things too. Like it's a big chain reaction that's made all cartoons better.
And it's still continuing to this day, and hopefully it will forever, so that the money doesn't run out for me.
Yeah, I mean, we grew up in the 90s Renaissance, but it was, in the grand scheme of things, kind of short-lived. It was maybe, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years.
Pokemon killed it after that.
Anime killed it, period. Even though we love anime, it's true.
And this episode loves anime, so.
Yeah.
Look, it really depends. It depends on what you consider the golden age. Like, do you consider, when do you decide that the end of classic Nickelodeon is, right? Do you think the last great Nickelodeon show was SpongeBob? Do you think single last great Nickelodeon show was Cat Dog. Like everyone has their own definition for those
I personally
things.
hate the phrase like golden age because everybody
There's always something.
The golden age always seems to be from when I was a kid to when I was no longer much of a kid anymore. That's like cartoons were perfect then, back when cartoons were targeted at me.
I think the golden age ends when you turn 15, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate.
For me, it was the early 20s. Well, in this show, I wish I had in my early 20s, but I think because I'm close in age to JG, he wouldn't make the show about his early 20s when we were in our early 20s. It took a little after that, but the misspent youth, the anger at shitty bosses, the chicken wings, the retro video games, the talking about 80s action films with their friends,
Putting your life in danger constantly.
Yeah. It's the dirtbag adventures of suburban white kids, which like that is what
That's
I was.
a better title. No.
Well, and so yeah, before we get into your Toby and Owen's history in this, a quick history on regular show and the creator JG Quintel, which you guys worked a ton with him, so it might feel weird for you guys to hear me give his biography, but
I'm gonna lean back and see how you do.
We want the real dirt.
So JG Quintel is a SoCal native who grew up as an animation and comedy nerd and worked a number of minimum wage jobs on his way to the hallowed halls of CalArts, where he was also classmates with guys like Pendleton Ward and Thorup Van Orman, who would go on to create their own series on Cartoon Network. At CalArts, he produced a couple of student films, one, The Naive Man from Lollyland, and two, In the AM/PM, one of which featured a dandy fop with a giant head and a flying car, and the other which featured two gas station employees doing acid and transforming into a giant blue jay and a talking gumball machine. And they both featured the voice of JG's classmate, Sam Marin, who would be a constant in JG Quintel's work. After that, JG went on to work as a storyboard artist on Joel Murray's Camp Lazlo. And then when Thorup Van Orman got Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack, he brought on JG onto the show, where he worked until a 2009 pilot of his for Cartoon Network starring characters from his short film, his student films, called Regular Show, was sold to the network, which would feature those same characters plus an energetic raccoon who do crappy minimum wage jobs in a park that then somehow spiral into insane adventures that have the fate of the universe at stake in some cases.
I think maybe we should have asked him because we've talked to him about 30 times now and, did a live show with him. But Bill Oak was attached to the very beginning of Regular Show.
Oh, that's right.
Did he help,
that's true.
Did he help develop the show and the characters? And
he was, as far as I know, he was involved in very early writing, and it was especially the development. And
Okay.
He was around and he was helping out. JG speaks very highly of him. I know he did a little bit of stuff on Close Enough as well. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I did not.
And I think Bill Oakley, I don't know if he did. He may have come back to do a little bit of consulting on the movie, but I don't know if I'm remembering.
This is rumor and hearsay.
We'll call him later.
Yeah.
Also, the main character, Mordecai, it feels as close to a self-insert as you can get in one of these shows. I mean, JG does the voice, which seems like just his regular voice. And when he drew the human version of Mordecai in the short in his student film, it's just him. So.
I love when creators do voices on their own cartoons. I love it so much. And you didn't need to tell me he's from California. Like when he talks, I can see the state of California floating above the character. It's so great.
The degree to which the self-insertness happens, I think, varies from episode to episode. But like I remember I had my first my phone interview with JG back when I was living in Minnesota, and I was like, "Wow, it's Mordecai on the phone!" And yeah, I know they even auditioned people to do Mordecai, but everyone was just like, "It's got to be JG. It's got to be this specific thing."
Yeah, well, the one time I got to interview him at a con, it struck me too of like, oh, that's just his voice. Like it was just weird to be in the presence of Mordecai. And so yeah, the show got greenlit by Cartoon Network, premiered September of 2010, and several people who worked on the storyboard and writing side, on top of our guests Toby and Owen, who would go on to great things. Like there's Calvin Wong, Kat Morris, Paul Scarlatta, Minty Lewis, Shion Takeuchi, who Takeuchi just was one of the writers for Disenchantment as well. And previous to that, Gravity Falls, where she worked with Josh Weinstein of The Simpsons.
Okay.
Wasn't it a real place for artistic growth for you guys working on the regular show?
I mean, tremendous. It was
Taught
crazy.
me like everything that I know about everything.
Yeah, because I mean, both of us came in with like you at least went to school for animation.
I did, yeah.
But I was basically just like a geeky fan of the show who came in on season 3, who had no animation experience whatsoever. And so it was, the years that I spent on that show. I mean, yeah, it's how I learned almost everything I know about storyboarding and storytelling.
I didn't even like the amount of storytelling that we learned from that. Like, I feel like I learned like, here's how you make a streamlined story that works. And like, here's clarity in storytelling was like one of the top things I learned from that show. And also obviously just how do you storyboard something. Technically I went to school for animation, but I'd only ever had to animate anything for myself. So I remember when I went in and I was like, yeah, here's a storyboard. They were like, oh, that's not a storyboard.
Yeah, and like you think because you know how to make a drawing or whatever,
exactly.
but like and you name just a few of the people with whom we we worked and we formed these very close bonds and these creative relationships, and we're still meet up and catch up and talk about what we're working on and all of that. So it certainly has been was a formative experience.
Storyboarders were a pretty close-knit group.
Extremely, yeah.
It was a board-driven show too, which was pretty much standard, and I guess still is standard for most Cartoon Network productions, right?
The majority of like 11-minute shows are
At the time,
board-driven.
that was still a relatively new thing. Like, I'd never even heard of the concepts.
Yeah, they kind of phased in and out of them, but kind of Flapjack and Cheddar kind of were bringing them back in full force.
Yeah.
I mean, Laszlo was also board driven, so they didn't fully go away. But there were a few more script driven ones until they kind of came back so strongly.
And
I didn't even know that existed until Adventure Time, when I saw like, oh, writer board artist. Okay,
Yeah,
wow.
When you got that job because Toby got the job before me, like a year before I did. And I was like, well, you just get to sit there and draw and write jokes, and that's it. That's the job. What are you talking about? What do you mean that's a job? Like, like it was so bizarre. And then when I finally was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll try it for that thing, and it worked. So that was cool.
Yeah, once I mean, for me, it's like once I got over the learning curve, which took a while. I would say it was 10 or 11 episodes, but once I got past that learning curve, it was like, this is the best job in the world.
It was 10 episodes exactly.
Yeah, and JG told me that.
He said 10 episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I remember going to lunch with JG after my first episode, and like, because the show has such a particular tone, like a lot of our stuff got changed at the very, very beginning when we were working on the show. And I remember getting lunch with JG and just being like, oh, this is, when am I going to feel like, I'm really, doing the right thing here? When am I going to feel like I know what I'm doing? And then he's like, about 10 or 11 episodes. And that's exactly what happened. And
the exact same thing happened to me, because I remember I was told the same thing, 10 episodes.
Yeah.
And then I was sitting there, I remember I was working on an episode being like, I gotta turn this out. It was pretty easy. And I'd like gotten to the point where I was like, I'm just kind of doing it. I was like, oh, this is my 10th episode.
Yep.
It was just done. I was like, yeah, I know exactly how this
Yeah,
goes.
and like the episodes TGI Tuesday and A Bunch of Full Grown Geese, which is the prequel to this one, were the first two where I really felt like I was hitting my stride, and I was able to, do the show properly, but also, tell stories my way and that are in my voice.
So can you tell us just what the process is for you pitching an episode idea? Was this idea assigned to you? Did you come up with it on your own? And what is it like to create via storyboard? Are there multiple meetings where you walk the creator through the storyboards? How many revisions are there? We just don't really know how the entire process works with this show.
Sure. Well, regular show, it's a very, I guess you could say the production's a very tight ship, and all of the areas are very segmented.
Yeah.
So the writer's room is where they come up with the premises and outlines for the show, which are usually a 3-page document that goes beat by beat through all the events that occur in an episode.
And they always start with the hat thing first.
Oh yeah, and they often will come from like a writer's games they do in the room.
Like writers' games where they go like, here's a couple of words and stuff. And they do like use those as springboards. They see, was there anything that we're kind of interested in here? And they start like branching out into something bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Until eventually they make a premise.
Like a one-page premise, which they submit to the network.
3 very large paragraphs on a page.
Yeah. It's like the basics of like, for A Bunch of Full Grown Geese, it would be like, geese are terrorizing the park. Mordecai and Rigby try to stop the geese and they fail. So they get the baby ducks to help and there's a giant robot fight, in one page.
Yeah.
And then if that gets approved by the network, they move to a 3-page outline, which is quite a bit more detailed. Usually it's like scene by scene, the basic things that they want to happen in a scene, a few jokes in there.
It's basically like the actions, what happens, why,
Yes.
and where.
Yep.
pretty much.
And then what happens then is that the board artists, in teams of 2 usually, so in this case it was Owen and I, on Monday morning after you hand in your episode, on Monday morning you get a new outline, which 9 times out of 10 you don't know the first thing about what
No,
it is.
you have no clue what you're getting that day.
Because again, it was a tight ship and they kept everything kind of in its own area. And so the board artists were on regular show were very rarely in the writer's room for the story breaking. And so
Was there anybody who ever was?
there were some meetings near the beginning of the show and
I guess.
Stuff like that. And then so for this episode, we were having lunch with Sean Zellis a few weeks prior, and he was like, I think your guys' next episode will be a Baby Ducks episode. And my response was, oh God, because we were really exhausted and burned out from doing an episode called Married and Broke that was like a really, really difficult Japanese game show episode that was like super exhausting.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah.
We hated it. We hated it so much, but it
ended up being great.
It ended up being like one of our favorite episodes.
It's just sometimes it's the wrong episode at the wrong time, and we got it. And we were just like, oh
and
no, and we
was
just like hemmed and hawed about it for like a month, and then we did it. We were like, wow, this is really funny.
We kept like going to different locations to write, like anything that we could go. Just fine, let's go to the roof. Oh, let's go to a different seat, and like just doing that over and over for like a week.
Yeah. So the idea of doing another episode, like I love the Baby Ducks, so we can get into that about kind of the prequels to this episode. I love the Baby Ducks, and I loved working on that second Baby Ducks episode. But the idea of working another technically difficult episode sounded horrible.
I was very excited about it.
But we got the outline, which again, it was a 3-page document. And I'll go back to describing the actual process. It was a 3-page document, and we got it, and immediately we just lit up and got super, super excited. So what happens is you get a 3-page outline, and then it's our job over the course of, depending on the show, 1 week or 2 weeks, to basically go from that outline and write and draw the entire episode as a storyboard. And so we write all the dialogue, we draw all the scenes, and we make the story work to the best of our ability.
And by draw all the scenes, it means you're drawing every pose basically that you need to do. You're almost drawing like rough keyframes in a way.
It's close. On regular show, less so than other current shows, but you draw all the main actions of the show and all the staging and all the expressions and everything. And so 1 to 2 weeks, you pitch it to the crew for the first time. And on a regular show, that was just JG and his supervising director and the writers. Mm-hmm. You pitch it to them. They give you notes. You go back, you tweak the episode, and then another week later, you pitch it a second time. You get your final notes. If you're lucky, it's only 2 pitches. Yeah. You get your final notes. You do those notes. You spend the final 2 to 3 weeks cleaning up the episode, which basically means you take your rough thumbnails that you shat out in a week, and you make them look nice and presentable and like something that can actually be used as a production blueprint to create animation out of. Mm-hmm. And yeah, for us, that's where it ended. We finished the writing and the drawing after 5 weeks. We hand it in, and then it's on to the next episode. And then it goes through the entire production pipeline from there of, voice record, animatic, and then design and animation.
Wow.
Is the layout stage in America, or does that happen overseas for regular
Technically,
shows?
it's overseas.
Yeah, it's overseas. Yeah. They do things based very heavily on whatever your boards are.
Correct.
But it also depends on the show. Like for a regular show, they were almost using the boards almost as layout. They were, I think that was actually some of the instruction that they were given.
Yeah, and a lot of shows
I had to give that instruction on my pilot too.
Yeah.
Which is that's just sort of how you end up doing things. Where it's like use it as layout, and then what they'll do is they use the expressions to be, they're like copy your expressions as close as they can, and then all the details will sort of be closer to the model and stuff like that.
Yeah, on regular show, that was the way it went. And and usually the what they do for the animation is a combination of the actions that we would do in our storyboard, as well as the information that the animation timer, the animation director includes in their X sheets, which is like a blueprint for like frame for frame what exactly needs to happen at every single frame.
So like on frame 1, this character has to be in the first pose that you see in the storyboard. On frame 12, you have to ease into the second pose that you see in the storyboard, so that by frame 19 they're in the next pose.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
And so we wouldn't necessarily board out on regular show. We wouldn't necessarily board out like every single time a character's head would bob when they're having a long sentence conversation. But the animation timer, the director, Robert Alvarez on regular show, would put that information in, and then that would be part of the blueprint that the animators would go off of.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I was asking that question because I was just wondering if that puts more pressure on the storyboard artist, if everything is very, very dependent on that, and there's no layout stage in that's not overseas. But that's great.
Yeah, pressure is immense because if you draw a shitty expression, 9 times out of 10, that shitty expression is going to come back as you do it. And on regular show,
like lines and stuff, you're like, oh, that's just some line. I'll change that line later. I'll change that drawing later, and then you don't, and then it comes back, and you're like, oh
it comes back shitty.
Everybody's gonna know that I did
And
that.
and regular show was a more on model show. You know, we were asked to draw on model, and then the animation studio sometimes would go even farther with it. But doesn't matter if you do a shitty drawing of Mordecai's weird arm and it goes through, it'll still look shitty no matter what.
Well, and the show also has an amazing voice cast. Like, it's such an eclectic group that I just love. Like, every new episode I watch, I'd be like, whoa, is that person X? And then I'd see in the credits, and it was like, it's so, because you have a mix of some folks who were originally just animators like JG, Sam Marin, and Minty Lewis in major roles. Then you have a bunch of voiceover folks who mainly I know from the video game world: Roger Craig Smith, Stephen Bloom, Troy Baker, and Jennifer Hale.
Yep.
And then there are comedy nerd favorites of mine too, like JD Haddad, Linda Cardellini, Jason Mantzoukas, Adam Pally, and Andy Daly, like guys like that. And then super famous people who I also just love to hear, like Mark Hamill in a major role, but also guests like Katie Seagal, Tim Curry, Christine Baranski, Amy Sedaris, Ed Asner, Carl Weathers. Like, it's just amazing to look at IMDb to really like, whoa, all those people were on this show.
I think everybody had their moment where they're writing skips and they're like, well, Mark Hamill's going to say this.
Yeah. And then we would go to the voice records, and Mark Hamill is just like the nicest guy in the world.
Total sweetheart.
And he would
Seems
just
like
go
it.
on like liberal rants about whatever horrible thing the conservatives were doing right now.
Super
Like, just
long.
between the lines, he'd be like, you hear about this shit? And the other thing that was really fun was that, you know, in the time that regular show was in production was the time when Star Wars was not happening to the time when Star Wars was happening again.
Yeah.
And so you'd see him, and suddenly he has this like beard and everything, and you're like, what's going on, man?
They'd be like, well, I can't really talk about it. And we'd be like, I know what you're doing. Because I remember like he had started like his physical appearance had started changing. He started like talking about things that he couldn't quite talk about. And Star Wars had been announced, but Mark Hamill being in Star Wars had not been announced yet.
But it was like, we were like, I'm putting the dots together.
Yeah,
here.
putting the dots together. And I remember at one point he was talking about having to get fit for and only being able to eat like turkey sandwiches with mustard with like mayonnaise on them. And he's like, well, I can't have mayonnaise now, so I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, you could have mustard. And he like stared at me, and I was like, it's because it's only 5 calories.
I remember he did lose a lot of weight to get back into the role too. Yeah, you're right.
Well, that's how they demand. The late Carrie Fisher joked
Yeah.
about that too. She said they didn't want me for Back for Stars; they wanted me minus 60 pounds. Like,
but the voice crew was amazing, and you know, going down to, you know, we didn't always get to go down as board artists, but whenever we did, it was always a huge treat to get to see them work. And Bill Salyers is like one of the most amazing voice actors in the world as
Very nice
Rigby,
and genuine
he's
guy.
a super nice guy. It was just like a very warm family down there.
oh, sorry.
JG was really cool in that he even let us go down there.
Yeah, he didn't have to.
He didn't have to, no. And it was it's pretty unusual for board artists across the industry to go down to the voice record. But it's fascinating because you get to be there and be like, okay, well, how are my lines interpreted by other people? How does someone direct what they're seeing? Like, they look at, like, Chris Zimmerman would like look at the board and be like, oh, we need to direct this, sort of the lines to be sort of like this because that's the face this character's making.
Yeah.
And then you'd be like, oh, I should have drawn that face better because it's not exactly what I mean. And then, you know, you learn a lot.
And it comes down to the true meaning of, you know, board driven, because it's like, you know, the stuff that we do in the board is kind of the blueprint for everything. And so like whatever weird line read we pitch based on, like whatever weird rhythm we give a joke, is what they're trying to replicate in those voice sessions as best they can. And often they'll do something different that's way cooler and funnier than what we came up with. But sometimes we'll be there and be like, could you say it a little bit more like
Could
this?
you put the pause on that instead of the?
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Bill Salyers because Rigby is amazing, and it's so like defined by just constant screaming, and just his energy is at a high all the time. And it really hit me how different that is from other roles he plays when I played the recent Spider-Man video game, because
it's incredible.
He's Doc Ock in that, and he does an incredible job with Doc Ock. Like I'm not going to spoil stuff about it, but they ask a lot more of him than most people who have to play Doc Ock in a video game, and he does an amazing job.
Yeah, it was great Morden Solis too in Mass Effect.
Mm-hmm. And he's so great. And yeah, that game, I was so happy to see him in that role because it's such a meaty role. And before regular show, I mostly knew him from Mortal Oral, which is a totally different thing.
Oh yeah, as Reverend Putty. He's
Oh, you're right. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Jeez.
I love Roger Craig Smith and Stephen Blum in general. And like in this episode, them being gruff guys talking to each other.
Yeah. I mean, Roger Craig Smith became like their house guy pretty early on. They bring him in for just about anything. And I think he just always was clued in on the tone of the show in a way that made it really easy. And I'm actually going to personally take credit for getting Stephen Bloom started on the show because we cast him as Tecmo in Skips versus Technology. And we suggested him and he came in and he started doing all kinds of stuff on the show.
And I also, when I see comedy nerd favorites like Jason Mantzoukas or Andy Daly on the show, that's why I feel like they're as smart as me to know these actors.
Yeah.
They listen to
and it's just
podcasts. One thing.
Yeah, definitely it was like I think that it was JG and like Sean Zellis and John Infantino and Mike Roth were like making all those choices. I mean, Sean is like a huge comedy nerd.
Yeah.
And he was always like trying to get he was I think the first person to bring on like Andy Daly. And Jason Mantzoukas is so funny on the show and the movie as well.
One thing I really like about regular show is the amount of bird representation. Like the main character's a bird, and there are just birds in all like so many episodes. Maybe just the ones I watched.
Bob loves birds.
Especially this one. Is there some sort of like comedy theory, like birds are funnier, birds are a funnier animal to draw and to have jokes around?
I think, well, it's really interesting, right? Because, Bob, I know you have you don't enjoy violence against birds.
That's true.
But birds causing violence is very funny.
I like that you accurately depict geese in your cartoons, and I have an amount of respect for geese because they realize they're dinosaurs. No other bird is on that level, but they know they can terrorize people, and they do.
Another really cool aspect of regular show, which I love, is like on top of original compositions by songwriters like Mark Mothersbaum, there's also, compared to like almost every Cartoon Network show, this has a lot of licensed music in it, which is used very well. Like, say, Stan Bush's "You've Got the Touch."
Yeah.
Like, that was amazing. Or "Happy Birthday," which I really, if you guys can give me any insight on how you got "Happy Birthday" when it cost a lot of money, I would love to hear that.
I think Turner owns it.
Yeah.
I think that they wrote the episode they wrote the episode not thinking they would get it and they were going to not ever do it. And then they found out, actually Turner does have it and we can use it.
Wasn't that also right when they were like, hey, wait a minute.
It was right on the cusp of that becoming
legal.
legal.
Copyrighted, and it was right there.
Well, I think that, when it comes to the way licensed music became like kind of a part of the show, I think it was that they had just put some licensed songs into the animatics of the early season 1 episodes, just kind of like, I'll throw that song in there. It's kind of like this.
They assumed they weren't going to get them.
Yeah, and the network was kind of like, well, maybe we could get them. We really like them here. And so they actually like carved out a certain amount of the budget every season to do a couple licensed songs. And as the seasons got longer, I think that amount didn't grow. And so there were that's proportionally fewer.
That's why if you watch the show, sometimes you'd be like, well, this song sounds an awful lot like this other song. People go like, well, why didn't they just use that other song? Well, because they would rather spend the money at a certain point where the song really matters.
Yeah, like
really important.
For example, in season 8, I think there were a few licensed songs they were going to do, and they ended up spending all that money on the David Bowie finale song.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the right place to spend that money. Like that was that ending. I mean, that ending gave me all the feels, as the kids say. But
epic.
But it was a great final episode in the Bowie song. I mean, it also was that song chosen after he had passed away.
I don't think it was. I'm actually.
So.
I can't claim to
have
that. I don't really remember.
It had even more impact because it aired in January of 2017. So we were like a year removed from Bowie's passing, and so then to hear "Heroes" in the finale, and that Happy Birthday one too was such a. When I first watched that episode, and it came to the point where like, well, they're going to sing Happy Birthday, but they don't sing Happy Birthday in cartoons. That's illegal. They can't do it. Like it would have been less shocking to me if somebody like had their brains explode on screen or something at a Happy Birthday song.
Yeah. We for a while at our monthly like crew birthday cake meetings, we would sing the new Happy Birthday song that was created for that episode.
But none of us knew how to sing it.
Yeah, we had to like play it before. They didn't play it beforehand. We had to like remind each other like how it went.
Happy birthday to you.
It's pretty good. It's not bad.
I don't know.
They did a good job.
The Thanksgiving episode, it's hard to rewatch now.
Oh, it's horrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because, like, and I've talked about this before, but like when we were boarding that episode, when the decision was made to kind of do a Trump villain, it was kind of like, oh, it's kind of a weird thing to reference in this year. Like, what an odd thing to kind of do for this. But we did it anyway, and we had some fun. Wrote some good jokes, and then now it's like, oh God. Oh God.
Yes. Well, yeah, so the series always began with this idea of like bizarre action that would spin out of a boring task assigned to Mordecai and Rigby by their bosses. But over time, the show really grew into have a lot more arcs and storylines and, continuity between episodes. A character in a season finale would get broken up with. And then in the next season premiere, he'd be in Dumpstown and trying to recover from it.
Yeah, that was one of the most satisfying things about working on the show because, I came in during season 3 when the show was still very, very episodic, and seeing the episodes kind of begin to connect and watching the characters slowly grow over the, 220, 30 episodes, it was extremely rewarding to do. And certain character arcs, especially like Rigby, it felt great to see them through and see them grow and change so much over so
Rigby
long.
was a very satisfying arc, especially by the time he got to like college stuff, and then the college, they're graduating, like that graduation day, because we did the graduation day special, and then we got to thread that whole thing in there where it was like Rigby started growing and changing and Mordecai hasn't. And like that's a really cool feeling to talk about, that again, kids cartoons don't really talk about how one friend is changing and getting better than you in some way, and your life keeps being shitty. Like it just doesn't. Oh wait, can I swear on this podcast?
Yes.
Okay, great. Keeps being shitty. So it was a really cool thing to get to explore, and you only get to explore that after it's been like what was it, 7 seasons of that?
It had been so long, but even like pretty early, like in season 4 is when it started having. Because I remember, there was this kind of unrequited thing with Margaret right at the beginning, and then having that actually develop, I was like so happy. I was so satisfied that the show wasn't just spinning its wheels. It was actually like making bold swings.
It's also cool because you're watching it originally just as a fan. Then you get to come on board and be a part of the show and be like, oh, I'm going to say the lines that Mordecai says to Margaret to get her back, or like whatever. Like I'm going to write those lines.
It was really great to kind of be trusted with like major story and character arc dependent episodes.
This is kind of old news, but since we have you guys on the line and recording with you, I really need to know about living through Billy Mitchell Gate and what that was like for you working on the show.
Can you legally talk much about it?
That's a better first question.
Well, there really actually isn't that much to it. They really kept, everyone on our floor didn't know about it. It was kind of kept totally, no one was saying anything. And then the day came when Billy Mitchell lost, and then everyone was very happy. And then we didn't know that the thing was happening. I think they were just trying to keep it, again, very segmented. They didn't want to bug us with that kind of stuff. But I remember just reading that article that was like, Garrett Bobby Ferguson, unlike Billy Mitchell, explodes into goo.
For our listeners' sake, we have to explain Billy Mitchell is the villain of the documentary King of Kong.
Yeah.
And he was a Donkey Kong champion, but now I believe he has been disgraced utterly. Is it now fully decided he was a cheater? He was cheating through emulation or something like that?
Was he?
Yeah.
And they brought the character back an extra time after that court thing went through, because it's like, well, now we can use him whatever we want. And it was really fun because I worked on that episode Exit 9B where we get to see like his son and everything like that, and that was just a fun character.
That's another the all-time great episodes too. Exit 9B, I love it, and I also really Owen, I guess this one was really important to you. I did want to ask quickly about the Chinese teacher one that you guys did together. I love that one. Like there's moments, like you said, the Mordecai realizing he expected Rigby to always be the lower expectations, so he doesn't have to meet them. That spoke to me. I had like a friendship like that, and same with the realization that Benson has when he's in China of like, you flew all this way, you came all this way, and you're still being the same jerk. Like those both really hit me hard. Those ones.
Yeah, there's no way that was just me speaking through Benson at all. The China one was really fun for me because it was like when I was asked to do that China episode, basically Matt Price brought me into his office and he's like, we're talking about maybe doing like a thing with Benson goes and teaches English in China. So like, because you've talked about that, and how did that work for you? And I just sort of told him like how that worked, and he's like, what sort of feelings did you have? And I talked about that, like why I even went to China in the first place, and like all these various things, which at the time, you know, I realized when I was doing that episode that I'd lived in China for longer than I'd been working on the show at that point. And that was like 2 years into working on the show. So I was pretty well versed in the show at that point. But it was really a fascinating experience to sit there and like comb through all these photos and comb through all these like emotions that I had at the time and go like, well, this is what I was feeling. This is what my students were like. This is a thing that happened every time I started class. I would start class and these students would go, hi. And there would be like the same thing every time. And like, it was all very like umbrellas hanging on windows in the background. Like you could see that stuff. Like all those things were just like beat for beat what my life was like all the time. And I've gotten emails from teachers who are currently teaching in China, and they're like, this is the most like real episode I've ever seen of anything in my life, man. And they're like, this is like shows a real China that I know, and like all that sort of things. And also because that school in the episode was so it was a trace drawing of a photo that I took of the school. so like the kids, there was like some kids that found that episode of Regular Show, and that just at that school just blew up.
Wow.
Like, oh my God, there's an American cartoon with our school in it. And it was like this huge deal there, and like really fun.
It was fun getting the opportunity. And, you know, whenever it's something like that comes, when you get an outline where you can tell that it was catered to your specific sensibilities,
Yeah.
and you get the opportunity to kind of actually like really express your thoughts and feelings about something.
Yeah.
Like with that China episode, you know, we co-wrote every episode, but like with that one, it's like, well, I'm here to help you as much as possible, and I will draw the parts that you don't have time to draw.
More than 250 episodes of the series, ended in a spectacular mega finale on January 17th, 2017, after a whole season spent in outer space. Like that's how wild and directions the show went to. And after that, JG went on to work on his next series, Close Enough, which should be coming out in 2019. It seems, based on the footage that's out there in trailers, it seems like a pretty close spiritual successor, both in look and subject. I mean, JG voices the main character again, too. So it seems like a close sibling to Regular Show. And then, meanwhile, Toby, you first did your pilot, AJ's Infinite Summer, which everybody should check out.
Oh yeah, everyone definitely should. I worked on that. Yeah, it was pretty early. You know, I was maybe here. It was maybe a year or two into working at Cartoon Network. I did that pilot, and then at the end of season 7 of Regular Show is when I hopped over to help run OKKO.
Which, you know, we said before, I love that show. The my favorite joke of all time, actually, I didn't say it on OKKO, is the moth collection joke. That is my favorite joke.
That one, the credit for that one goes to our one of our writers, Dave Tennant. That was in the outline. Very weird joke, very funny.
I just love it's. I'd never seen that spin on the moths flying out of the pocket joke before. Just God, it made me laugh so much. But then meanwhile, Owen, you did the pilot for Infinity Train, and then you now is that going to be debuting as a series next year as well on Cartoon Network?
Yeah, that's as far as I know. Yeah.
Until we hear otherwise.
Until I hear otherwise, as far as I know, yeah, it's coming out next year. Or I guess because this is the podcast of the new year, this year.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm super excited to see that show again. I think you guys are the I guess, like how we talked about how Flapjack begat. It's now sounding biblical. Flapjack begat Regular Show. Now Regular Show begat this, and plus a cross pollination with Adventure Time and Steven Universe people. It's interesting. It's cool times at Cartoon Network original productions right now, I'd say.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool shows that are being made right now, and they're all feel very distinct from one another, which is something that I love.
And what did you guys bring to your future works from Regular Show? Because I definitely say with OKKO, I see a bit of the same, feelings of the doldrums of minimum wage employment. And same with Infinity Train, this idea of a regular person in an adventure setting. That also reminds me of Regular Show in a way.
Yeah, it's funny because everything is in a lot of ways a reaction to the previous thing. So at first, when I'm working on something new and someone's like, "Oh, it's like Regular Show," I get defensive and I'm like, "No, it's very different from Regular Show." Mm-hmm. But the fact is, we learned what we know from working on that show, and that's where we came up. And so a lot of even though the things we do are very different in tone and style and things like that, a lot of foundational things about storytelling and storyboarding come from regular show. And certainly that there are tonal things in OKKO and some of the drudgery of minimum wage, and some of that comes from Clerks, of course, as well. And and again, you can see it in some of the tone in the AJ pilot as well, the more low key dialogue and things like that.
I find it's one of those things, like regular show is a very, I think, middle class show.
Yeah,
like the things that the people are experiencing on the show are like, you're right down the middle. Like, this is what, you're not like too far down, you're not too far up, you're just kind of coasting through the center. And I think that that's something that I attach to a lot, which is that it's people have normal lives, and they go about their life. I work at the gas station, and then I go home, and then I watch TV or something, and then whatever. And it's a very, like, that's your life. And I care about that kind of stories happening to that kind of person, I guess.
Yeah, someone who the entire universe doesn't necessarily revolve around.
Yes, that's very important.
Until season 8, of course.
Oh, well, when we come back, we'll talk more specifically about this episode of Regular Show Brilliant Century Duck Crisis Special.
And now, a regular look at Regular Show.
What? Oh, you want us to put the hurt on you? I think he wants me to put the hurt on him.
I think he wants you to put the hurt on him.
You think he wants me to put the hurt on him?
Yes, I do.
Regular Show. It's anything but. New series premieres Monday, September 6th at 8:15, right after Adventure Time.
Oh!
Only on Cartoon Network.
Yeah. It's Henry Gilbert here. Welcome to the break.
Hey, it's Bob Mackey. I'm a huge fan of pro-bird propaganda like Regular Show.
Whoa! Hey, no, we should do that in tandem, Bob. Whoa! But hey, we want to thank our guests, Owen Dennis and Toby Jones. It was awesome to have both of them on here and to hear tons of insight into making this episode a Regular Show and just the entire series in general. It was really cool. I look forward to doing more What a Cartoons like this with the folks who did it. But if you want to hear more awesome, fun What a Cartoons, like say next week's episode right now, you can find that easily by signing up for the Talking Simpsons Network at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
That's right, just go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons, sign up today, and at the $5 level, you will get every episode of What a Cartoon a week ahead of time and ad-free. And the same goes for Talking Simpsons, and there's also so much going on at the $5 level, like mini-series like Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, whatever we do in 2019, possibly 2 mini-series in 2019 if we hit that $11,000 goal, and we're so close as of this recording. Also, tons of interviews, monthly community podcasts, end-of-season wrap-ups for Talking Simpsons, deleted scene specials. There's so much happening. If you sign up today and you've never been a part of the Talking Simpsons Network, you'll have literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of podcasts to listen to. If you like our voices, there are so many hours of our voices hidden behind the paywall. It only takes $5 to sneak in.
So please consider signing up for $5 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And if you want to take it up even another notch, you can go to the $10 level, because then you get access to our monthly What a Cartoon Movie podcast. We did Batman Mask of the Phantasm. We've done Kiki's Delivery Service, and in January we'll be doing another one chosen by our patrons. Me and Bob going deep into a different animated film, and you can only hear that if you sign up at the $10 level, patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
We appreciate any amount you can give to support the show. Even $1 a month would be appreciated. So yes, if you want to help support the show, you can give any amount you want, but that $5 will get you into the most basic tier of content, and that includes so many bonus podcasts for you.
And now let's get back to Regular Show. A jolly good show indeed.
Regular Show Toys. You control the action. It's almost as good as the real thing. Almost. Collect them all, each sold separately. Available exclusively at Toys R Us.
You know who I feel sorry for? My mom! Oh!
Ow!
an all-new regular show. Monday night at 8:15, 7:15 Central, only on Cartoon Network.
We're back. We just came in on the special opening song that starts this episode of Regular Show. I guess, how did this episode come about, guys? Because this is kind of, Regular Show did a number of sequel episodes, but this is like a sequel to like kind of 3 or 4 episodes at once.
Right. Well, to start at the beginning, I mean, the very first Baby Ducks episode from season 2 is in a lot of ways like a quintessential classic Regular Show episode.
Yeah.
And when I started working on the show, that episode hadn't even aired. And I remember going through the storyboards in the server and just being like, wow, these antics with these cute baby ducks is just like the funniest thing ever. Like this really low key, quiet. I mean, most of that episode, that first Baby Duck episode, the first 2/3, 3/4 of it is just very quiet, mundane, cute, funny, weird.
That with some little ducks.
Yeah, humor. And it's just like, and like the craziest thing that happens is that the ducks karate chop a snake. And it's just like, when you see it, it's like the funniest thing in the world.
They do kill that snake.
And my friends, Minty and Kat, they boarded that. And I remember just talking to them and just being like, gosh, this thing's so funny. And they were just like, what? Okay. And so
that's also, I think, how most people goes through their lives on these shows. Sort of like, people go, oh, that's really funny, that thing you made. And then we go, oh, okay. That's
what?
Cool, I guess. All right.
And so, like, yeah, when I was working with Kelvin Wong when the second Baby Ducks episode came through, which is called A Bunch of Full-Grown Geese. And I remember really feeling a lot of pressure to stand up to the legendary quality of the first Baby Ducks episode. And, you know, again, as I mentioned earlier, I was really finally starting to kind of hit my stride. And so Calvin and I worked our butts off. And that was one of the first pitches that I did with Calvin, where like JG was like really, really laughing hard. And JG, you know, he'll laugh at your jokes, but he'll also laugh at you. Like, for example, like in that episode, you know, the geese say scramble missiles before they shoot them out and do like the Atano circus. And that's just what I called them in the pitch. I was like, yeah, then they do scramble missiles. And then JG just started laughing at me because I called this thing scramble missiles. And then it was in the episode because it's like, no, they should say that because it's funny. And so, yeah, with that episode, Calvin and I just pushed it as far as we could to be funny and like try to up the ante. A few years later, when Owen and I were working together.
Well, I remember when I saw that board, I was jealous. I was jealous as hell because I was like, this is the coolest thing that you get to make. You got to make this. And I was sitting there going like, well, I just get to make things about some rapping silver guy. I want to make a thing about ducks transforming into things.
So yeah, when it came along, it was season 6. Owen and I had been working together for a little while. We had never been more burned out in our animation careers. We were very tired and disenfranchised.
We've since become more burned out.
Yes, quite a bit. And then we got the outline for the episode, which at the time was called Merch War, and it was an 11-minute episode, regular show.
Yeah.
And we got this episode and we looked through it, and it was, you know, the basic beats of the story were all there. It was like they get these crappy toys, they get propositioned to merchandise themselves, and they battle with the executives and the cassowary and the geese. And we got it, and we were like, this is funny, and it upped the ante. You know, they went to the moon to fight. But something came over us almost immediately where we were just like, we can't just up the ante as much as what is here. We need to take it so much, like to truly live up to the other episodes and truly build upon them. We need to like explosively build.
Well,
upon
something
them.
that we decided when we were making that one is that if we decided to look at each of the 3 Baby Ducks things as like, okay, so the Baby Ducks, the original one, is sort of like a 70s idea, like a 70s anime-ish kind of thing. So it's, like, it's kind of low key. It's got these ducks. Okay, they turn into a duck man. All right, and then the second one was like, okay, well, that's more your Power Rangers kind of 90s thing. It's sort of an update or like 80s thing, sort of an update. And then this one, we were like, oh, let's do like the most modern version of like anime transforming robot fight things. And so we tried to push it, like we were stylistically choosing these because we thought it was like the next step.
Yeah, and we had done, and we ended up actually doing a tribute to almost the entire history of the genre.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
and the fun thing was, like, I don't know why we thought it was okay to do this.
I know why.
But
it's because he said, hey, go crazy with it.
And yeah, he said go crazy with it.
He walked in, he handed us this outline that was shorter than normal outlines because he was like, well, you guys are gonna add a lot of action stuff, so we just didn't make it as long. Just go crazy with it. I remember asking, I was like, go crazy with it? And he said, yeah, just go crazy with it.
And so we somehow felt emboldened to add probably as many as 10 additional transformations on top of what was already in the outline.
Yeah.
And like in the outline, they go to the moon and they battle, and
Just
that's the
moon,
climax.
yeah.
And somehow we were just going crazy with power, and we were just like, what if they kick themselves and they crash into the moon explodes, and then they transform into the moon. We were just like cracking ourselves up basically and being like, how crazy can we make this?
Yeah. And it was fun because like that whole action sequence was basically like, what's a cool thing that a robot could do? And then like we made a whole list of things that one could transform into, or
all the possible combinations of cassowaries,
weapon,
ducks,
all those
humans,
things,
geese, robots,
and just like piled them up and tried to figure out a logical order that you could put these things in that would feel like they were building upwards. So there were a couple things in there that I remember not putting in because they felt like they were equal to other things in how cool they were. And I was like, well, it can't be equal to other cool things. It has to be cooler than the last thing.
Yeah.
And so like, I remember I had one that was like, oh yeah, it's this chain thing that shoots out, and then a missile attaches to the chain. The missile launches along the chain like a zip line and crashes into a person. Got cut out because it was, not as cool as transforming into the moon.
And we were just spent that whole first week just being like, what if we make this impossibly complicated and huge, and obviously way more material than we were asked to produce.
This is another episode where I got in trouble with the art director.
Oh yeah.
Like, because there've been multiple episodes where I don't think other people had.
You had the problem the most by far.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I had many problems where the art director would come and be like, "Owen, what are you doing? Like, this is going to cause so much stress. This is going to cause all these problems in production." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, whatever." And now I have my own show, and I'm like, "Stop it! Stop doing that to production."
Yeah. So we spent that whole first week just basically coming up with the dumbest, stupidest, funniest arrangement of rising robot magnitude. And then designing and drawing all the million robots. And basically, at the time, you were not as well versed into anime.
Oh, still.
And so I just went and printed out reference from like every anime giant robot in history to reference as far as the visual style. And we tried to make them kind of change in a linear fashion of how futuristic and where they were in kind of the history of the genre.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get permission to make something a double length episode? Because there's only a handful in regular show, though that season had a lot more than...
We didn't. Again, this whole time we were like, this is an 11-minute episode.
Yeah.
And so the way it worked was we got together and pitched the thing. And normally the boards, we would put them up on the wall because they were physical, we drew the show on Post-it notes.
Yeah.
We put them on the wall and we'd pitch. Usually it would be 1 or 1.5 walls of material. And this one wrapped all the way around the room.
Yeah.
And they came in and they were like, what did you guys do? And we pitched it, and JG was on the floor laughing.
The way we pitched it, because we didn't tell JG about any of it. So we were like, we went to JG with a couple of designs going like, oh, we're thinking they transform into this. And he's like, okay, cool. And we went with a couple of those, but we never told him about the moon or anything past the moon.
Yeah.
So everything past the moon, what we'd done is we'd taken a piece of paper and put it over the paper that was there, that the storyboards and stuff, so you couldn't see ahead to what was happening. So then as soon as the came up, it's like, oh, then this happens, and then he transforms into, and then you pull down this paper, the moon, and it's like this huge like moon.
Wow, what a reveal!
He was not expecting that.
No, and again, he was like crumbling onto the floor, laughing.
Like on the floor, he was like trying to hold himself up on the table, like his arms were shaking. And
it's a rare thing because, like, on a show like this, when you make these kinds of swings, sometimes it really blows up in your face, and you have to redo the entire thing. So we were really just like going for it and hoping that JG liked it, and he loved it. And what happened was we handed it in, and we were just like, "Good luck making this in 11." We didn't know how they would do it. We were just like, "Okay, well, we basically cursed you with this thing."
Yeah.
And then they came back to us. It was a few weeks later. We were working on our next episode, and then JG came by, and he's like, "We're expanding it to a 22."
Because it turned out it was 17 minutes long.
Yeah, as we handed it in.
We handed it in, it was 17 minutes long, and cutting something down from 17 minutes to 11 minutes is the worst kind of hell.
Yes, it is.
So it was 17 minutes long. I think there was some other show that just didn't happen. Like there was some other show that like got canceled or something, like, oh, we're just not going to do this anymore, and that one just got cut out of production.
Oh, another episode. You mean?
Another episode.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, well then we still have these on another 11 minutes worth of space to fill. What if we just expand this one?
Yeah, and so
every single thing that we put in there got to be kept. And then we just got to add way more.
Exactly. JG came by, and him and the writers had written another page or so of scene suggestions and ideas for things to add to make it justify a 22 minute slot. So we add a lot of extra nuance to the story in the first half, and a lot of Benson's whole arc got added.
Yeah, because we briefly added, there was a little bit of Benson in there that we had added, which I think was like a sold out thing. Like,
yeah, tiny bit of Benson.
Yeah, it's good to sell out, and that was about it. And the writers like ran with that. And added this whole arc with him.
But once again, we took it in a different direction beyond that, because what happened was we were just like, okay, this is fun. We'll add some more. And again, we got taken off of the episode we were working on. I think we were on the Halloween special or something. Like that. And they were like, pause what you're doing, spend this week adding to the Duck episode.
Yeah.
And so we're looking over this list of scenes, and we're, splitting them up and being like, okay, I'll do this scene, you'll do that scene. And we were like, okay, to each other, we're just like, what would we really like to see? And then we were like, well, the best thing to have would be a full anime intro.
Yeah.
And so you just like, basically we watched a bunch of anime intros.
Yeah.
And then
So what I did, was I was like, well, we have to make a whole anime intro. That's a lot. That's a lot of drawing and a lot of scenes and stuff. And so over the weekend, because I only really had one weekend to do this, over the weekend, put together a fake anime song that was...
It was like an amalgam of several anime songs.
It was a couple songs put together. It was...
it was Cruel Angel's Thesis and Just Communication.
Yes. Just Communication until they like charge up at the very beginning. They change, and that becomes Cruel Angel's Thesis. So I put together this song, and then I tried to like edit an anime intro to that. That was really hard, and it wasn't exactly working. And Toby was like, "Oh, you should check out this little known anime called Evangelion." I was like, "Well, I've heard of it. What is it?" And then he showed me like some stuff from it. He showed me the intro. I was like, "This is incredible!" But I had no like one of the cool things about that opening is the crazy editing in it.
Yeah.
And trying to mimic that editing is impossible. Like you can't just go like, oh, I'll just kind of like figure it, because if you're just doing it in storyboards, all you have is a bunch of pictures. And so who's going to understand, okay, well, this picture is 13 frames long, and the next picture is 2 frames long, and the next picture is this. It's like such a bizarre editing style. So I straight up just took it off of YouTube and put it into editing software and like matched up images to try and make it.
Oh, wow.
Like, whoa.
And basically this was all in like a day and a half.
Yeah, I did all this
because you came to me like on Sunday afternoon, and you were like, "Here, I made this." It's like it was the animatic for the intro.
Yeah.
And we were just like, "Okay, let's JG again." We were just we'd like mentioned like, "Hey, what do you think about an intro?" And he was like, "You guys can try it." And we pitched it to him, and of course he was just like, "Okay."
I can't to this day. I cannot believe how many things he said okay to on that show. It's crazy. He said okay to everything that we asked for.
Well, the Evangelion-ness of that opening is what I love so most about the black lines over red drawing of Rigby, the like fetal pops, and then the very random drawings in there, like the freeze frame I like the most was Pops and Skips dancing in the living room with 2 sexy ladies in a urinal. Like that I think was my favorite of them.
It was a whole lot of stuff that was just it was so much. There were so many different drawings, and also I had to like color each of them. I didn't have to color each of them, but for you to understand in the editing bay what was happening, because seriously, a bunch of black and white images flashing that fast means nothing. So like I had to color these things so you could understand, okay, well, this color is followed by this color, and like this idea, like it was
and let me just say,
what was I doing? Why was that was bonkers.
Look, let me just say, when the episode came out and we were on the front page of Anime News Network, I felt that I'd truly arrived in that moment.
Yeah, and the song sung by Rina Hoshino. When did she come into that?
She came in after I was working with John Enroth and Albert Fox on the music, because I'd made that sample of like, this is what the music would be, and then they did a rendition of it, and then we're sort of like, oh, just add sort of some lyric sounds or whatever, and we'll try to find a melody there. And then I ended up writing a bunch of lyrics in English that I thought were appropriate for what we were doing, and then I had Kat Morris translate them for me, and then tried to figure out ways that we could fit it in that would work. And she came in, I think, on the advice of of John and Albert, I think. They were like, oh, there's a singer that we know that can do this really well. And so she came in, and then again, JG allowing us to do whatever allowed me to like go in the room and like help direct her in her singing and stuff. So I was in the recording booth with her, like helping do like, okay, and then it goes up and and like doing the whole like direction with her, which again, the amount of stuff that they were letting us do on that was just so cool.
Yeah, it was very fun and like very educational and like extremely empowering. You know, we were so proud of having made something that got to be so close to kind of our vision of it.
Yeah, because nothing got cut. Nothing got cut in that.
Actually, a general question I meant to ask earlier was like content-wise, Regular Show was a dirtier Cartoon Network show. Like it was TV PG, wasn't it? So the line was different than on what most other Cartoon Network shows would have.
That's true, and you know the lines are always changing at Cartoon Network, and I'm sure you've noticed that at the beginning of the show there are certain words we were allowed to say.
Right.
Piss, crap, H&S, etc.
Turd.
That pretty soon after we weren't allowed to say anymore. And that's something that kind of continued, and we had to find new creative ways. And the funny thing was that as the content of the show got less like on the surface risque is when the stories became a lot deeper and more mature. Because it's like, well, okay, if we can't say crap anymore, I guess we'll, you know, deal with the nuances of adult relationships or something.
The Simpsons-iness of the show too, we didn't really talk about, but like you guys, like you mentioned, you worked on your own Treehouse of Horror on the show too.
Yeah, and it's really funny. Speaking to the Terror Tales episodes, when they were first getting started, I wasn't really excited about the idea of working on them because I was such a Regular Show like nerd, and I was such a nerd for like the continuity of the show and the characters, that the idea of doing something like, oh, it's just like a wacky thing that is just a story they tell, I was like not that excited about it. But the first time I got handed one, I did Terror Tales 3 through 5, or did I do 6 as well? I did several of them, but I started with the third one, and immediately I was like, wow, this is so much fun. Like it was so much fun to go even more off, because the show
it's very freeing.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, the show is very off the wall, but it has a very strict realism to the tone, especially before it gets wacky. And like, but the logic, there's always like an internal logic. And whenever you have a situation where you don't have to follow internal logic, such as a Halloween special, it's extremely freeing. It's like a vacation, honestly.
You can have characters make the stupidest decisions.
Yeah, and call it out
the stupidest way, and then it's okay because they're being like, "Well, I'm going to just go do this very stupid thing," and everybody goes, "Oh, well, Halloween special," and it's fine.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. It's fun to make,
and then they get to die or something.
Yeah.
So they don't have to. They face the consequences of their actions, and the consequences are death.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you know, the Simpsons dropped the wraparound sections pretty quickly, but Regular Show kept them all the way to the end. And by the end, it was very, very difficult coming up with new Halloween costumes for the characters.
Man, by the time we got to the 8th season, that was so hard because the 8th season takes place in space, so everybody's in like space clothes anyway. And then throughout the entire rest of the season, we'd already done a bunch of like, oh, okay, well, we got this character from this sci-fi movie. That's what they are, and like did that the whole time. And then they're finally in space and like, oh, we want you to do some like sci-fi themed like costumes and stuff. I was like, we already did a whole bunch. We're running out. The space one, you end up with where Benson's sitting there going like, yeah, I'm from that time travel movie, but that guy who's time traveling inside of a storage locker, you know, that one.
And they're like, didn't you just get that out of your closet?
Last thing before we start getting really into the episode, but isn't this episode also kind of a subtweet of real Regular Show toys that were made?
Oh, I was
it's pretty interesting, isn't it? The way those things happen. Let me just say that, you know, obviously there's a lot of stink when it comes to toys. You know, everybody wants a toy to come out, but the toy companies, you know, they have their own standards and rules of what they don't and do want to make toys out of. Comedy shows in particular tend to get the short shrift. And so the Regular Show got toys at all is actually kind of unusual. That said, for OKKO, I would kill to have crappy toys on the shelves for that show.
OKKO is like, oh, I'd love to see a like McDonald's style.
It's built for that.
Where it's like they've got a toy that does this very specific motion, where it's just like you press a button, it only does one thing. Like that's what I want to see.
Yeah, the fact that you can't get toys of the Hue Troop and all their vehicles is a crime. But in any case, what you're picking up on there may be some truth to that.
Okay, now you've just got me dreaming of like from our childhoods, the McDonald's toys of the Fraggles or the Tiny Toons in their own vehicles. I do just want that for OKKO now. You've
I think the first line for OKKO should only be characters and vehicles.
Look, we did whole episodes based around that idea and the hope that could happen. But
the designs are right there. But
hey, if somebody wants to do them, please, I'm begging you. But in any case, it was really cool that, like, again, the regular show merchandise, and there was quite a bit of it, was very weird, and it was really amazing. It was just cool working on a show that was so like culturally prominent. Like, it was kind of a household name. Like, people knew what it was, and it's rare for any show to have that kind of ubiquity anymore.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, I walk around and I'll have a regular show shirt. I still have people that are like, "Oh, regular show, I love that show." And it's like, wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's still popular. Like, people still know it.
This episode spoke to me too as somebody who, as a kid, you think I'm lying because of how many toys I'm surrounded by, but I wouldn't call myself a toy collector now. But as a kid, I loved my action figures, and these gripes that Rigby and Mordecai have in here are the things that made me angry about a bad action figure as a kid too, right? I'm sure for you too, Bob.
Oh, for sure. And again, this episode gets crazier faster than most regular show episodes do, but every regular show episode is supposed to start from a grounded, relatable place. And a lot of those complaints were actually in the outline as being like, this is the part where we all have had this experience of getting a toy that looked cool in the commercial and then sucks in real life.
Toys not standing up drove me crazy when I was
a kid. That was a very well-observed point.
Like, what are you supposed to do with this? I don't understand. This man is supposed to stand. He stands in the movie, so he should stand here.
There were toys where it's like we drilled a hole in one of their feet so you can put him on this one rock. He can kind of stand up on this one rock, but that's it.
I remember using a lot of tape, putting tape on the bottoms of their feet to make them stand. But then it only worked if it was duct tape, because I remember I used 3M tape. It would just sort of rock back and forth.
So in this episode, after an opening voiceover that takes us into the world, we get to see a quick Carter and Briggs of them roasting a man alive.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing that, again, TVPG, you can roast someone alive and call them dead. Yeah. It's fun.
And then we get the Carter and Briggs toy commercial.
And now a special look at our new line of Carter and Briggs figures. Say it. Yeah. Carter follows Briggs into a time portal to become Carter and Briggs 3099. Alien crime lord attacks.
Give me all your credits.
Carter swoops in with his hover suit. Briggs hits the bad guy with non-lethal fractal kick.
Hi-ya!
You have the right to remain dead. Travel through time, tough on crime.
Carter and Briggs toys sold separately from Playco. Playco!
This piece of junk costs $14? It looks horrible.
No kidding. Mine's eyeball looks like it's leaking into his face.
They can't even stand up on their own.
I know. You have to lean them against each other.
And Carter's shirt. They painted it skin color so it looks like he's just shirtless. I hope somebody got fired for that one.
I do like the well-observed joke in there of the kids knocking over things in their own sets that they built.
Yes, yeah.
So oftentimes the action figures wouldn't have play sets, but the kids in this commercial would have their own set that they made to play in.
Cubes.
The cubes, yeah.
Whatever those cubes
knocking over cubes, yeah.
Weird nebulous dark zone.
Yeah, we watched a lot of old Batman the Animated Series toy commercials. And Aliens, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that's the kind of stuff we grew up on, and it's just like the world of a toy commercial is actually a very magical place.
It's really cool.
The kids have access to complete sets too. It's very strange.
I remember being so impressed whenever I saw RC commercials with cars that flip upside down, all that sort of stuff. Being like, oh man, their steps that they have at their house are the exact right height to do this, but mine isn't.
Exactly, you get it, and then you just have one driveway that's flat and it can do nothing.
Yeah.
And the concept of Carter and Briggs 3099, I love that too, because it feels like the eighth wave of toys, because they've done every version of Batman or He-Man, so they got to bring them to the future for new versions of the characters.
Ninja Carter and Briggs, they've done
exactly
feudal
it's totally based on the Ninja Turtles and Batman thing, where it's now Batman shoots ice lasers.
Yeah.
And basically what it came down to was Carter and Briggs had existed in the show for a while at that point, so we were just realistically, if they'd been making toys this whole time, where would they be right now?
Yeah.
And also, I can't believe we did Poochie with you, Toby, but I forgot that I hope somebody got fired for a line was in one of your regular show episodes.
Oh yeah. Those things, it's just part of the tapestry of our brains. And so when an opportunity like that comes up, it kind of slips in very naturally.
Well, it's also a thing people say.
Yeah.
That's the thing people say online.
That's true.
They really mean it, though, which Mordecai really means too. After fucking up Benson's bisque, which that feels like the exact right lame soup for Benson.
I when I was working on this episode, I got a lot of help from my girlfriend Maddie, who was working on the show at the time as well. And now she's on Infinity Train. And I remember asking her, like, what's the funniest soup to ruin? And she was like, tomato bisque.
It's a fancier tomato soup, so it'll cost some money to replace that.
But the fact that Benson's pathetically eating it like with little TV tray,
like
watching Mordecai and Rigby watch television,
as his employees childishly play with action figures on the floor. And we get some classic Pops screaming here, which is always funny.
Playco, more like play no. Ugh.
Pops, what's wrong?
I was attacked by a prehistoric beast. What? You mean like a dinosaur? Dinosaur! Have we seen one of those before? Huh. Well, I guess today's the day.
It's not a dinosaur. Come on, let's scope it out.
Oh, man.
I like how he wraps himself in the curtains. It's very for protection.
One of my favorite moments about that scene is Pops runs in, and then when he runs by Benson, he gently places his hand on Benson's head as he runs by. At the time, Toby pointed that out to me as being like, I just like doing that because it makes it feel a little more intimate.
Well, that's actually something I think Rebecca told me that.
Yeah,
Rebecca was like, hey, if you draw two characters touching, they have to become one drawing. They can't be two separate drawings on two separate layers.
Yeah.
Very intimate.
Wow,
But base level, it's a more intimate drawing no matter what. It's a very, very Rebecca thing.
I love Pops in general. He's such just a lovely man who he likes nice things and wrestling and fancy things. And then he's so easily upset by geese or other animals. And it's even funnier when, I guess some spoilers here, but when you find out he's a godlike eternal being, that he's also this scared of stuff. I think it makes it even funnier in retrospect.
Yeah. I love Pops. He's, a lot of the characters, he's very easy to write for. And very, very fun. And, one of the sad things is, I was on the show for so long. I did like 40 episodes, but I never got to do like a Pop-centric episode. Wish I could have. But so whenever I had a chance to write Pops, I gave it all I could.
Another thing about how like writing these things works, that line where it's like a dinosaur. Have we seen one of those before? I go, no. All right, I guess today's the day. That's just Toby and me talking to each other in the room.
Like we genuinely were curious.
Like, have we seen one of those before?
In the show, yeah. Nice. And again, the show normally kind of shies away from more overt meta humor. It's not one of JG's favorite things. In fact, we would do it. It's fun to just kind of, we just can't not speak in our voice, I guess. But originally, for example, in a bunch of full-grown geese special, originally when the fanny pack went around the robotic, duck mech, it said regular show on it. It was like a regular show branded item.
Oh, that's fine.
But I think they found it to be a bit confusing, and so we didn't do it. But a joke like that, it was just, by that point, we'd been on the show for a while, and we made it work in context, and it was because having Mordecai and Rigby acknowledge out loud how crazy their life can be is actually a little weird, because it takes a little bit of the magic out of it, because it's like it makes them feel a little bit less normal that they are aware that their lives are so crazy. But by that point, we were deep into season 6. It was like 150, 180th episode.
I mean, at that
it was
point,
like, why
it has
not?
to start being pointed out. I mean, it's kind of, because otherwise it's almost not believable. It
It would
becomes another thing where it doesn't even seem believable if they wouldn't.
Exactly. It would strain credulity otherwise. But yeah, I don't think that they had actually encountered dinosaur yet.
So how did you land on a cassowary? Is it just the most dangerous flightless bird you could find?
Yeah, that was one of the key story points from the original outline. And I think that the logic of it is just that, like, what's the biggest, most
goose?
What's the biggest, most terrifying bird out there? And cassowaries are, like, again, we did a lot of research. They're horrifying.
Yeah.
It's very terrifying to look at in the episode, and it feels up until the point it is revealed to be a robot, it's a very interesting, like just like kind of dead-eyed, very real-looking bird, which makes it even funnier when you see in the same shot this bluebird man next to him too. And in them trying to get rid of the cassowary, my favorite gag in there is the remote-controlled car, just because like the second excessive stomp on the car like makes it even funnier to me.
Yeah, that sequence came from the scenes that we added later. Originally, it was a much shorter thing where they encountered the cassowary and it pretty much right away shot the missiles out. But once we were able to add time to make it a 22-minute special, give it a bit more of a gradual ramp up. That was one of the scenes that I was like fresh out of ideas, burned out, and I was like, Maddie, I have to come up with like 3 things that they that they try to do to the. And she's like, I don't know, a robot car thing, and she helped out even with the way it was going to play out. And that's what's nice about having a partner who's working in the same show as you are, is that we can help each other.
I like when you think they're going to ram it with the golf cart, but they just stop and beep at it.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's what would work in real life. That maybe you just scare it away with honking
And
the
they're
horn.
doing everything that I think I would
realistically,
try to get a bird out of the park. Makes sense to me.
But then the reality is of the cassowary is revealed. It's actually a robot. When those missiles come out, it is quite a shock. They call up the baby ducks again, straight from their contact list, which I love seeing that too. And that they don't have a smartphone, because it's even in 2015, they still have a flip phone, which is very funny to me.
They're all doing their own.
Oh, yeah, it's very regular show. Yeah.
And they're all doing their own extreme sports while they get the call.
Yeah. And again, that's like upping the ante, because it's like in the previous one, you saw that they live in like a Ninja Turtles-esque like cool hang zone. So it's like, okay, what are they all doing right now? That was a really fun sequence.
But when the baby ducks arrive, the true plan is revealed.
Baby ducks!
Hey, dudes! Time to send this cassowary bot to the cemetery lot! Huh? Did you guys order a limo?
It's not our birthday yet.
Baby ducks.
Playco!
You fell right into our trap. Now sign the toy contract, or we'll be forced to use more extreme measures.
Toy contract?
They've been bugging us about this for months.
We'll never sign!
Mordecai and Rigby, we need you to sign too.
What?
That duck warrior you and the baby ducks turned into? It would make an amazing toy. So what do you say? Sign over your likenesses?
No way! Your toys suck!
Yeah, Playco. More like Lameco.
Wait. More like play blows.
Oh!
Every more like joke made me laugh each time.
I was kind of I was a bit surprised to hear blows on this.
Oh, look, the things are very inconsistent. We've said blows on OKKO. Like, I don't really know. I can't claim to understand why or how certain words come and go, but
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, on Pete and Pete, they got to say blowhole all the time. But though back in the 90s, Dexter got to show his butt all the time. And I don't think you'd get away with a butt.
Oh my God, don't get me started on butts, man. butts are just like illegal now. Like I sent a collage to Cartoon Network. I sent a collage of dozens of cartoon butts trying to get a butt into the show. And they were just like, sorry, doors closed, no butts. It was very tragic.
That's sad. Steven Universe must have been one of like the last butts then, I think.
Yes, that was the final frontier of cartoon child nudity.
That's why today's kids are so soft.
They don't get to see enough animated child asses.
Exactly.
The Playco confronting them is so funny. They're being so pushy and offer them $100,
which is a month's pay. We find out.
Oh yeah. And the briefcase. It's really interesting. We were looking over the outline to kind of remember kind of where it all came from, and that is in the outline. It's just like it just says like
offers them $100.
They offer them $100 in a briefcase.
No.
Yeah. And so we decided that it was a month's pay. Although previously we've seen that a week's pay is like a little bit of change in a baggie in like a season 2 episode.
I've loved seeing all the things that came out right after that. People trying to break down like, wait, so how much money are they making an hour? People going like, oh well, they're only making 50 cents an hour because they've broken so much stuff that they have to pay it back.
Well, they get free room and board. I mean,
it's not a bad deal.
And also the points of articulation thing that Rigby, that Mordecai gets him on, that one is especially important to me because the posability and activity of an action figure means so much. Like, I was a huge Star Wars fan. I didn't buy one Star Wars action figure because those had no articulation. You get elbows and thighs. That's it. It's bullshit.
Look, when you're a reader of Toy Fair magazine in the 90s,
right.
you know that the value of an action figure figure is measured in the number of points of articulation.
That's why McFarlane changed the game. I think on the box it would tell you how many points of articulation there were on those McFarlane toys.
Finally, someone being honest.
Count them.
Well, as a Spider-Man fan, especially, Spider-Man was always on the cutting edge of hyper articulation because he had to get into the most craziest poses. Like, let alone if you had a Spider-Man that always had one hand stuck in thwip position, that's a lame Spider-Man.
What if he wants to hug Mary Jane? I mean, what's he gonna do?
Yeah,
it's dangerous.
Yeah. I remember that they had it was called like the super articulated Spider-Man toy that you could get. That was like everything was like an orb that you could shift around. But yeah, and again, as a nerdy kid, I was getting into Evangelion and being like, man, these Eva Kyoto action figures are so articulated.
Oh yeah,
that's also interesting to me in this episode because it's complaining about American toy crumminess, though not universally, but the crumminess of some American toys. And then you bring in stuff from like Power Rangers or Voltron that are Japanese toy commercials in a way. And so you get to think about how much better Japanese toys usually are, though not universally either. But I mean, there's the eternal debate of Funko Pops versus Nendroids. I mean, there's no debate. Nendroids better.
They win ultimately every time.
Except in price.
I'm a Kubrick guy.
Oh, I could never really get into Kubrick's. But yeah, so they reject Playco because the toys are horrible.
Hey, these are horrible. They only have like 3 points of articulation.
Yeah, and they don't look anything like us. Maybe if you at least got the colors right.
Hey, who here runs $1 billion toy company? Cool it, Neil. Look, guys, it's too expensive to change the molds at this stage. Come on, kids won't notice anyways.
You screwed up the Carter and Briggs toys, and the Us toys are even worse. No deal.
We thought you might say that. So we invited some friends to help convince you.
I mean, that rejection of it too, it feels very real to hear like, well, it's too expensive to change the molds now. Kids won't notice anyway.
We have reason to believe that, some of those lines may have been fed to us in a knowing manner that would lead us to believe that they were actual.
They felt very specific in the outline, so it felt very important to put them into the script.
I see. They did feel very real. And so the geese show up in their own limo. They've already signed up with Playco. And I also love in this next bit here that Benson is your sensible older friend who would just be like, sell out. You got to retire someday.
Having principles. Too expensive.
Retirement fund jokes are like Owen 101.
I love jokes about
sensible people.
Sensible people spending money wisely.
Sane planning, sensible future.
Join us. Become immortalized in plastic and cheap paint.
Never! I've heard enough.
How'd you hear?
You've been yelling this whole time. Just sign the contract and get that cassowary thing out of here.
You too, Benson?
Listen, be sensible. Selling out can be very lucrative. Those toy royalties could really beef up your retirement fund.
No. You can call us a lot of things. Lazy, slacker, irresponsible. But there's one thing we're not, and that's sellouts. We're drawing a line in the sand.
I respect that.
Nice, Bruce.
They don't get it.
Looks like we're gonna have to force your hand to sign!
We should point out the geese show up as enforcers.
Yes.
Those were the geese talking in the beginning.
We're sort of like coming outside and being like, I've heard enough. Like that whole thing was a solution to actually get to this faster.
Yeah,
because originally it was just, so they explained to Benson what happened and we're like, it kind of takes up a lot of room to do that. But they've been yelling a lot. So we probably heard it. So just come out and you've been yelling this whole time. I heard you the whole time.
Yeah. Snipping moments just to kind of get to the meat a little faster.
Action.
I love that reaction because they have been screaming. I mean, Benson has to hear them screaming quite a lot. And yeah, so that's when the transformations begin. You guys speed through the previous transformations because we got to see the new stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's how it works. Also, like all those shows and stuff where it's like, yeah, you've seen this transformation. We're going to spend all this time.
Although I guess instead of writing a bunch of new story points, we could have just reused that animation of the original transformations.
Why didn't I think of that?
It would have been
so much easier.
And more fitting for an anime, right?
Yeah. You could have explained it like, well, Sailor Moon reused every animation every time. Why can't we do it? It's a reference.
We see Hyperduck Extreme and also the villain Moto Gusawari X. Axe. Hope I said that right. I wrote it down.
This is also when we started naming them because we had
to name them all.
So many transformations that we were like, we can't. The one where he turns into this thing, but it's not like that. It's like, and you have all these descriptive names. So we just finally like, no, we have to come up with a naming convention.
Yeah.
Did you name the characters different vehicles before the transformation? Did those have names?
I don't think they did in the board. I think that they just were shown. Yeah.
Well, and
I love doing that sequence with all their weird, dumb vehicles that come from areas of the world.
That Pops one is my favorite.
Where it appears and all you're left with is the Turn A Gundam mustache. It
disintegrates into nothing because it's going so fast. This giant spinning mustache as dolphins are swimming along next to it. It's great.
It's so wasteful because when you see in a funny way, when you just see his big head, you're thinking like, well, how's this going to be part of the robot? And then it's just the mustache.
Which also implies that if they ever want to do this transformation again, that thing had to be built again.
I bet there's
disintegrate again.
I bet there's just 1,000 of them in the middle of the ocean. But yeah, we got to get the Turn A Gundam mustache.
The calling of their bots by pumping their fist, just hilarious. It feels like straight out of Ultron, where they're all coming from different places. I mean, one is like right out of a volcano. I just love it, and then they go in different directions because when you first see, I was sure it was going to be a foot, Muscle Man and High Five Ghost car, and instead it's the abs of the machine.
That's right.
The see-through abs, like the open middle section.
I think we liked that one just because it's like, oh, it'd be cool if there's a robot that had just a glass center.
Yeah,
and you could punch through it and then use that as to your advantage in some way, and then we ended up using it to our advantage in some way.
And I also love that Benson, everybody else seems nonplussed or just excited by it, but Benson is going through the realistic reactions of what would actually happen in these transformation sequences.
Yeah, and that was part of the addition of like, okay, if we've got a bit more time in this episode, we can give a little more to Benson. So we added extra moments where we're kind of tracking his emotional state and giving him a little bit of an arc and focusing on his misery during any situation is fun and funny, and having him stuck as the clipboard, which is like not as cool, and then getting to do that silly G Gundam sequence was really fun as well.
One of my favorite jokes in the whole episode is when Benson is in his Ava plug suit, and he just his like little sound when he reacts to his butt in seeing his butt. He's like, oh.
Yeah, it looks good.
So shiny. So you can draw the butt crack if it's through clothing. Then there's got to be rules.
Yeah. Okay. On regular show, that was very prominent. In fact, there were some asses on regular show.
We got some butt cracks
in the first few seasons and butt cracks. But yeah, something like that was good to go. Any moment of Benson being aware of his own hotness is always great.
Well, yeah, actually, here's some of the transformations happening here.
Yes, we do.
No, wait a second. Everybody just... Hyperduck Extreme!
Fusion mode, ready to fight.
Hyperduck Extreme? Really? That's all you got? Moto Gusawari X!
Whoa. Looks like we're gonna need some help. You guys! Pump your fists and help us take a stand against poor aviary merchandise.
Right!
When the first round of transformations is done and you go to commercial, when you come back, that fight's all Matrix Revolutions, right?
Owen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I love that. Though the Matrix sequels get a bad rap, and for good reasons in some cases, but I really do love the final fight in it. Like the Wachowskis, both with that movie and Speed Racer, they were so ahead of the curve of real life anime fighting. That's what I love about that fight scene in Revolutions, the final one between Smith and
all the action stuff in the Matrix movies are incredible. Like Matrix Reloaded has one of the best car chases in film. Ever.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of good things you can get out of those movies. I think they get a worse rap than they deserve.
Very controversial.
Controversial choice. But yes, that was just Matrix Revolutions. Yeah.
I love when they're kicking each other and flying in the air as they're kicking on each other. That's my favorite.
That is great.
I just didn't want them to have rockets. So I was like, how do I get them up into the sky?
I think we're just what's the stupidest thing possible?
Like if they run at each other, like what's this big thing going to be when they run at each other? They could grapple, but that's like just what you expect would happen.
Yeah.
But if the stupidest thing is two people running on each other's feet.
And the thing with regular show that took me a little while to figure out is that like cool is stupid is cool is stupid.
Yeah.
And the more cool you make something stupid, the more funny and cool it will be at the same time.
Yeah.
And like, you don't wink at the audience at a moment like that. You just let it be the stupidest thing you've ever seen, but also really cool.
But because it's so stupid, it's incredibly cool. I don't know how it works, but it works.
In the early bits of the fight, there's some cool callbacks to regular show stuff too, like their laser disc attack, which all the Format Wars episodes I love. Those are great, and also the astronauts coming back to the
yeah. Basically, what happens in any sort of like long action sequence, because I boarded a whole lot of that. Basically, what happens is you're going like, oh, it's action, but like I feel like I'm missing. I just want a joke. I just need a joke here. I feel like I'm missing a joke, and so that astronauts one was just like whoop, going past, and that was just I just needed to fill some space with a joke. And I thought the idea of two astronauts only eating astronaut ice cream and that's all that they eat was terrifying.
It's a nice little breather because this second act is just all action.
Yeah, we tried to make it overwhelming to the point of being possibly unbearable.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote a ton of notes just to keep track of what was happening, and it was difficult even writing it down. Like, okay, well, what are they doing now? And because all the transformations are so great, and I think the first one we see is the limousines attaching to the goose robot to become like giant wings.
Yes, yeah.
So the executives get involved too.
And also the different attacks that incorporate their stuff. Especially Benson using his shield here, and then his direction to just press the one button he has is so great too in this quick clip here.
Benson, use the Medusa reflection technique.
The what? How? Just button mash. You only have one button.
I like writing Benson like my dad. That's like if I feel like if I was in this situation with my dad, this is exactly how it would end up being. Oh yeah, you just use these things and that's how it does it, and then be like, Dad, press a button, and like that's I've had Benson say like, "God darn it." Like my dad said. Yeah.
Well, this part of the episode is where the moon gets involved, and I like how this episode starts with two guys on a couch watching TV, and then in the end, the moon is destroyed and the Earth is presumably destroyed.
There were a lot of discussions about those various elements.
I was pushing on other episodes later in regular show to be like, hey man, next time we see the moon, it should be in two pieces in the sky. And they were like, no, we've already got the backgrounds made. It's just keep going.
And I love the spinning blade attack fitting with Muscle Man's classic T-shirt spin around too. That was great.
I never thought of that. Yeah,
they hit the moon. Oh, and the guitar, the Sphinx guitar, and the reloading of the guitar. Such a badass scene.
That was like the guitar one. We just decided we had to bring the guitar back because it was shown just in a photograph in the previous episode. Previous Baby Dogs.
You mean during the part where at the end where we see like the sequence, the scenes of other
scenes of other things.
Yeah. We were trying to like make it seem like all the stuff that you'd seen those flashes that had maybe happened in between, and trying to like create a linear logic to all of it.
And so, I mean, we realized like, well, that guitar was in just that photo, but it was never actually used. And so having it show up here, well, that makes sense. So it's just a guitar gun. It's not just a guitar surfboard. It's also a guitar gun.
Yeah. Throw it on the pile.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
I just love how this escalates because the castaway robot gets knocked into the moon and the moon splits in half, and then it uses half of the moon as a new kind of armor.
It's upgrade.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of my favorite edits in the episode too that feels very specific to certain anime of the slow rise that's repeated 3 times to show it. Like, was that from a specific show?
That was just my memory of what I remember happening in anime.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's such a primordial bit of that language that it just kind of came out naturally.
Because I thought it was supposed to be there.
We were very proud of ourselves when we came up with the robot fusing with the moon. We really were like, this will be very funny.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was brilliant. Yeah.
Well, Pops' reaction is my line of the episode, actually.
Luna Kusawari X, Omega Warrior.
The moon? Oh, we can't fight the moon.
It's been an honor kicking Robot Goose butt with you, bros. Hold on, dudes.
So Carter and Briggs appear at this point.
Yeah, their arrival was. I love Carter and Briggs in general. That they could have powered the ship in any way.
Yes,
but it's through donuts. They
go to the core of the robot and spin donuts inside of it. I wasn't sure what they were doing. If they're going to help shoot at the robot or become a part of the robot, but yeah, spinning donuts in the core.
When I had started getting to this stage of the boarding process, this is about when I started going like kind of crazy and feeling like, I don't know, I'm just going.
Because we had to, in order to keep on making things be surprising, they have to get even stupider.
And because then it was like they show up and I was like, that's pretty funny. And then I was like, what if baby ducks also have like a long lost teenage brother?
Yeah.
and then like Andy shows up, and if you watch Andy, his spaceship is a square, but it's a square because I could not think of anything else. I was so like out of designs. I was like, I don't know, it's a square with a hole in it where he is. I don't know. And it just becomes this huge, like, it was just so much.
The wiki for this says that Andy is influenced by a certain Gurren Lagann character. Is that true, or is this just wiki nonsense?
That's wiki nonsense.
I made it up on the spot.
Yeah, look, we love Andy. Andy's great. I love Gurren Lagann. Great anime.
Yeah.
And it has influenced other elements of this episode. But Andy is just something we came up with that was, again, we were just trying to surprise JG, basically, and just come with wacky stuff. One of the fun things about Andy is that he was voiced by, at the time, supervising director Sean Zellis, just as like a scratch voice in the animatic.
Yeah.
And we were just like, please do the voice in the final episode. It's so funny. And
It's
he
a very
did.
chill, sort of Mordecai style voice.
Yeah.
Actually, let's hear Andy real quick here.
Hyperduck Extreme! Cruiser Mod Maximum!
All right!
Hey guys, don't go chicken on me now.
Who's that?
It's our long-lost teenage brother, Andy!
I've been studying abroad finding myself. Now I find myself ready to kick some butt. Hyperduck Ultimate Fury Giga Wing.
So, kids, like what you're seeing? Samantha, I noticed your funometer is stuck in the middle. Why is that? Well, the robots are cool, but why aren't there any girls? Why couldn't the long-lost brother have been a long-lost sister? And how are all their disparate technologies able to even connect to each other? Doesn't like boys, doesn't understand robots. That's not what I said.
That's the best joke I've ever written.
I love that joke quite a lot too. I feel like a commentary on how toy companies are only interested in boys buying their toys, and
toy companies and all commerce and media. No one for some reason wants to make money off of people who aren't boys 6 to 11. Yeah, and it's just so frustrating. And like, that was just I don't. Do you remember where that scene even came from?
Yeah, I mean, JG said he wanted something about. He was like, if you can fit it in there. If you can fit it in there, have something about them watching, like, this is like a toy commercial. They're like watching something and doing note cards or meters or something.
Yeah.
And I had it. I mean, I was like, I get. And then like as I was going, I didn't know what else to do right then. So I was like, I can put it in here. Popped it in there, and there it is.
And the other thing about that scene that I see when I look at it again is that young girl is like a proto Tulip from Infinity Train in a lot of ways. But yeah, it was fun to get that scene in there. And it's like, I remember there was a couple people who were like frustrated that this dude show were trying to like make a point about this kind of stuff. And it's just like, hey man, we care about these things. Like, we're allowed to care, and just because the show is about dudes, like, I don't know.
It is surprising commentary from such a dude-ified show as regular show, but I love it. Like, it was even the researcher. This is the researcher's opinion, just editorializing, like, doesn't like boys, doesn't understand robots.
Internalized misogyny, man.
Yeah. So the Giga Wing transformation. I mean, that's an Endless Waltz reference, right?
As far as I know, the giant feather wings on a robot is primarily from Endless Waltz. Yeah.
And I also love, speaking of great Ben Benson acting. When Benson, everybody else is nonplussed by being in a new costume, but Benson is like looking at it like, what? Like, it's just for a second, but
yeah, coming up with all the different costumes, another very exhausting.
That's one of the things where I was getting in trouble with the art director. It's like, you made
every single time they cut back.
Every time they cut back, they need a new costume and a new
cockpit.
Yeah. And so like drawing a cockpit is really, really hard. It's a lot of buttons and like dials and things like that. And so like every time
there's like 9 of them.
Yeah, there's so many characters and all of them need a different costume. And so like to have it happen for one shot and then go away is like, that's so many hours worth of work that people have to put in just for that.
Sorry, whenever there's a costume change, does that require a new model sheet for that character or just a drawing?
Yes, any new thing you see that exists, someone had to design and art direct.
Yeah.
And color and
This is why I was getting in trouble.
Well, there's a great sense of scale to the fight too when it cuts back. Like even in their Giga Wing form, they are so much smaller than Lunar Goosuary X Omega mode. You get a real sense of
I believe it was.
I stopped writing down the actual names of the robots when they kept changing too much.
And bringing in Carter and Briggs was just more nonsense, and it was also to make it a little bit more of like a pet labor type thing.
Oh, cool. I never thought of that.
Make it tie back into what's happening earlier.
Yeah, and also, make sure they don't go away from the story.
This moment of Mordecai and Rigby, how stringent they are in this is so funny to me.
Sign the contract or be destroyed, Hyperduck.
Then it looks like you'll have to destroy us, because we'd rather die than have our likenesses turned into poorly made toys.
What? No! So be it. Scramble missiles! Crisis spread!
So that was the famous scramble missiles.
Yes.
Yeah, called back from the other episode to return. I think they say it like 3 times in this episode.
The way he says scramble missiles is just a very satisfying sound.
Well, so on a TV budget, you guys did quite a good Itano circus in this.
I was impressed.
Thanks. It was a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember this episode was the first time that I ever had pains in my hand after I drew.
How many storyboard panels is that all those missiles flying?
No clues. So many.
Yeah, that whole sequence was, it could have been a few hundred.
That scene, that was certainly, I think that was the longest scene I'd ever drawn. The thing, it was a lot. It was, I want to say 30 something panels. It was huge because it's like it goes from Andy through his eyes, and then they're like flying through space, and then it zooms in on the robot's chest as these things are flying by, and then it's going like all those quad laser things shooting out of the chest and stuff. It was a huge thing. But yeah, this was the first one I was actually kind of injured myself a little bit.
And this is one of those situations where if one of your board artists handed in something like this, you would just be like, take it back.
Yes.
Like, we will never try to do this.
We're not doing that.
Yeah, before this is a really great looking scene of Muscleman and Benson shooting the guns and having a lot of fun, and it's like mimicking a real camera moving past them and like moving around the robot. It's super great looking.
Thanks. That was a lot. That was also not, I mean, that's me, but that's also like all like the designs that they had to do for every single one of these like angles. And
to make sure they were appropriately not penis-like.
Yeah. Also, I originally drew them to look like penises. I didn't mean to, but they did. They were like these long cylindrical shaft-shaped things with basically penis heads on the end. And then it was like midway through production, they're like, "Hey, Owen, do you know these look like dicks?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess." Didn't think about that. Well, I mean, I did think about that, but that's also why I add all these like robot parts on. They're like, that just makes it look like veins, dude.
It's not your
sorry. And so then they had to go through and change all of them to be like these hard-edged, cube shapes.
I mean, it's not your fault that all guns are phallic in some way.
It's true. But yeah, that sequence was a pretty massive undertaking for everyone in the production.
Now, everybody should be very proud of that. Like, it works. Yeah. It's an amazing just pan through every character, and that not just expresses action, but also, you get to see Benson go through an emotional shift, too, of him finally embracing the fun of this instead of resisting it and having fun with everybody else in this giant quad cannon shootout.
Yeah. And again, the fact that JG was like, yeah, let's do this, and then put the effort behind making that scene last and be as good as it was. That's an incredible undertaking to have all those people do that. And for him to like guide it into that shape is very difficult now that I'm in this position. All these things where I'd just be like, no, I never want to do that. That sucks. That's too hard. But JG did it.
Also, I don't know if it was intentional, but the quad cannon sequence with the lights coming out of the knees and the chest, it also really reminded me of like Unicron's death at the end of the Transformers animated movie.
I see. I definitely can see that. Yeah, that was. I don't think we talked about Transformers movie that much when we were working on this episode.
It was mostly the very modern.
Yeah,
stuff.
but it's all in the DNA. It was especially prominent in that previous one, the Full Grown Geese episode.
Yeah.
When I saw that scene we were talking about, for like maybe 2 seconds, I thought, oh, they did a parody, and then I was like, oh no, this is the real song. They got the real song.
Well, and so they have a pretty what seems to be triumphant, but then the Nega missile takes out their arm in a very cool little scene, and it seems like our heroes are done for.
I don't want to almost die on the moon again!
I think we just have to sign it, dude.
No! Huh? You guys taught me something today by putting me behind those quad cannons, and it's to always stick to your guns. Don't sign that contract.
You're right, Vincent. At least this way we'll go out as the good guys.
Good guys? You're the bad guys. The contract even says so.
Baby ducks and the good guys. Nah, it looks like the contract says you're the bad guys.
Oh, dang. You gotta get your eyes checked, dog.
We never would have said yes if we knew we were gonna be the bad guys. You lied to us.
Your robot's black and gray. Of course you're the bad guys.
If we can't be the good guys, then no deal. No, wait.
It's impressive they even have a series Bible for the toys.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how down to Transformers. Like, Transformers became the bad guys that were casted in the show. Transformers is just a disparate toy, whatever toy molds that Hasbro could get their hands on of transforming toys. They just shoved them together and then figured out the characters later. And that, I mean, like you're black and gray, the coloring helped them define which molds were the bad guys and which ones were the good guys.
Yeah, that was one of the that big story turn is retained from the original outline, that the geese secretly wanted to become hero good guys and only signed up so they could get some glory, and it was denied to them, like everything else for all of us, by the toy companies.
And then finally that didn't even hit me, that shows them wanting to be the good guys, which explains why they would team up with their hated enemies, the baby ducks, because they finally want to be good guys. Man, I also love that you never say ducklings the entire time. It's just baby ducks. They're baby ducks.
I think that's just all the way back to the original first episode of Regular Show when she said a bunch of baby ducks. It's like we have to always call them baby ducks.
I love that the baby ducks don't have names, but Andy does.
They don't, yeah.
Well, he's the coolest.
Yeah, whenever we were doing the board, it would just be like D1, D2.
Yeah.
They come together to create the ultimate duck formation.
Hyper Duck! King Breaker!
Now, hold on. We can negotiate. Fast food deals, movies, apps where you record your voice and it comes out high-pitched. It's funny. It's synergy.
Synergize this.
Mordecai, Rigby, and their friends summon the Galaxy Blade from a distant moon.
So what is the reference where they're all like just hanging around in gowns inside the ship?
So basically, by the time I'd gotten that far into this, I was like completely, I'd used up every sort of easily identifiable sci-fi outfit. So there were ones that were like sort of a 70s-ish thing where they had like a white helmet with a red line on it, and like a fin, which feels kind of 70s. There was ones where it's like clearly the Evangelion like plug suits. And there were ones that were just like Matrix-y kind of things with tubes coming out of them. And so I still needed one more. And I was like, I can't think of anything else that's just quick to identify. And I was like, I don't know, just this. How about
Tri-corner hats and robes.
Tri-corner hats and robes.
Yeah, just because, like, again, like, but the whole idea with that last transformation is just like we're beyond even anything that we could think of.
Yeah.
And so like the final robot design is just like, it's just like nonsense. Like we were even trying to look at like
big spindly weird.
Yeah, we were like we were trying to find some stuff that like very unique, unusual designs, kind of dead ends in the history of the genre. Like we looked at like Aura Battler Dumbine and like Brain Powered and like different kinds of more obscure anime. But even that wasn't quite getting us there. We had to so the final theory was like this weird orbular rounded.
Like, what could you do? All these robots up to then were like big, like muscle, and then finally, like, what do you do? Let's just make something beautiful, like a big, elegant robot. Ducks.
And so that was like that's what we were, and also like we could no longer like just combine elements. We couldn't just add a bunch of crap onto what we already had.
Yeah.
It already was very far, and so it was like it all combines into one like magical godlike alien being
that's able to call swords from other planets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought up Dunbine, because that is one of the weirdest things. I watched it because I was just so into classic Gundam, but even I was like, boy, this is odd. This is like Escaflowne before Escaflowne, except bugs.
You just got the Blu-ray, right?
That's the rent the first VHS tape and don't rent the rest collection.
The Blu-ray just got released in the classic TV on Blu-ray form. The we know the laser. I'm sorry, it's not on Laserdisc, which is the ultimate format. But
I flipped so many discs.
Also, another great callback is that the true ultimate final move is Rigby's step off forearm from the very first Baby Ducks episode. That I love that moment.
That was another one from the outline, I think, where that was their final
Yeah, it had to be that they were so big that they could do it, and I think you were pushing really hard that like. They do the step off and it obliterates the Earth.
Yeah, I want to destroy the planet.
Yeah, I was like afraid because again, I especially at that time,
nervous.
at that time especially, I was such a reality and continuity nerd on the show that I was like, but how can they do that? How can you destroy the world? Like, but it's not going to make sense. But of course, I let go and we let it happen, and it was so much fun to do that way.
Yeah, evaporating the ocean.
Death and destruction in the shots of the Earth destroyed. It kind of maybe it's just because we just did Robotech for a podcast, but it does remind me of the post destruction of Earth episodes of Macross / Robotech. And also, of course, it's not as red as the end of the world in Evangelion, though.
Oh yeah. Yeah, whenever I think about, and I don't think you were referencing this at all, but whenever I think about like good scenes of chunks of the world being blown up, I think about like the fourth episode of Fooly Cooly, or even like Daikon 4.
Yeah, when after the karate chop, it's just showing the impact, how it's affecting things around it. That definitely reminded me of Fooly Cooly. After like the baseball episode where they have to hit the giant ball out of the atmosphere.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I think about. But correct me if I'm wrong, Owen. You just did this off the top of the dome. You just did that sequence just like, this is the coolest thing I can draw.
Yeah, yep. I was like, I've never seen the ocean evaporating was one where like, I've never seen anyone evaporate the ocean. Let's do that. That's what would happen. Like if an asteroid impacts the Earth, the ocean is gone. It just disappears into steam and nothingness. I'm like, that's cool.
And yes, it's despite the world being destroyed, it's a happy ending for everybody.
Yes,
that was amazing. I've never felt so alive. I don't even care that the park was destroyed. You guys feel like this all the time?
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, thanks for getting us out of that contract. Yeah, now I can finally sleep soundly in my $8 million mansion.
I'm just glad we're all safe. Wait, where's Andy?
Got a jet, dudes. I've got a hot date on your rope. It's been real.
Oh, what a nice fellow.
Thanks for helping us, Ducks. We are mortal enemies, but just this once, we were comrades. And that was pretty cool.
Oh! But really, thanks.
That was great. Yeah, that was great.
Okay, fine. No toys. That's cool. But have you ever considered video games?
Sure, why not?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Definitely.
There's no such thing as a bad video game.
I think if regular show had come out in maybe like 1993, it would have maybe 8 bad video games.
Now, Mordecai and Rigby in 8-Bit Land is a good game.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm talking
It's
about
not a bad game at all.
In our reality, they'd be made by THQ.
Yes.
They'd be for every platform. They'd be like the Ren and Stimpy games.
Yes, yeah. There was a half a good Ren and Stimpy game.
No, there wasn't.
of the 7.
If you put together all the content in all those games, you end up with half a good
one. Level from Stimpy's Invention, that's it.
Yeah, this episode aired about 16, 17 months after the Mordecai and Rigby in 8-Bit Land came out on the 3DS, which I remember liking very much. It was an interesting situation because me and Bob were in the games press actually when those came out. So.
That was a Way Forward game?
Yeah. That was really fun actually talking to JG when he was working on that and being like describing the concept of the game, that like the genre would change. And I was like, oh, that's very cool. And that last joke was just kind of a thought of like what other things has been merchandised. And like, even though that game is not really a bad game, it was in recent memory of like something that could be continued to be merchandised. And also there were lots of other types of games that were coming out in smaller forms.
I was gonna say one of the things I liked about that section was like in the whole end credits scene, which is when we ended the rest of those like images and stuff of like the ducks' lives.
Oh yeah, all the other flash forwards.
Yeah.
Like, in the end credits, like we ended up having all those flash forwards and stuff that were also like our soft pitch for a fourth baby ducks. Being like, oh yeah, they have to travel back in time and they finally do get to meet dinosaurs. And there was, I think there was something where it was like, yeah, they have to save the primordial soup from being like destroyed. Like geese and the ducks team up to help the primordial soup because it destroys all life or something like that.
We had a pretty detailed pitch for if there had been a fourth one. Because again, how do you up the ante now? It's got to be time travel with giant robot dinosaurs. Yep. And then there were, a couple other things in there, I like that the final one is just a lineup of all of the designs in the episode as though the whole thing were a toy commercial.
Exactly, yes.
That's great.
Benson's reaction to winning, he's a loser who barely is even invited to have the fun adventures. So his fulfillment is great. And also that Mordecai and Rigby, almost every episode ends with them winning. Like they always win the contest that's in it. And so they're just pretty much, it's how it usually goes. We win. Yeah.
It's another one of those things where we're deep into season 6 and it's the third sequel of this concept and we just have to be like, this is what the show is.
And they have to
but
some part of themselves at this point.
Yeah, but at this point it was like right as they were getting to be really, really close, like friends with Benson. And so this kind of thing was like starting to happen a little more often.
Oh, and there's a really fun embellishment too in the when the executives come out of the hole in the ground and like one of them rolls forward is getting out of it. Like I love that little thing.
That's just the beauty of animation where you're sitting there drawing all day and then you're like, I wonder if I can get away with having them roll for no reason.
Just one last little boop.
And then you do.
My favorite shot in the end credits of the previews is Mordecai doing the embarrassed back of the head scratch as he's running to everybody. I love that. There's the preview shots and then there is the kind of Cowboy Bebop black and white rose shot as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's another one where Toby had fed me so much anime at that point because I really I didn't grow up watching anime really. I didn't like it. It was a very stupid opinion. And so I didn't have these references, but because Toby did, he like gave me so many of these things that one I was like, yeah, and then there's like a black and white thing with a rose. And it was just in my brain somewhere. And then it was like, yeah, it's Cowboy Bebop. I was like, okay, great.
It was the real Duck Blues.
And one thing that's worth noting that that I learned from making shows is that it's not easy to be allowed to just change what the credits are for an episode. Like there are a lot of approvals that are involved, and it has to go like way up the ladder to even let us do a scrolling credits cinematic ending with different footage or the opening credit sequence the way we did it. Actually involves like a lot of extra like legwork and red tape just to do. So it was very cool that everything about the episode got to be like a little bit different and a little bit cool.
Well, and OKKO also had in the first season a really cool reference to the Cowboy Bebop Rose sequence, which for people who haven't seen OKKO yet, not going to spoil stuff, but I really love the whole sandwich arc.
Yeah, we milked that joke for everything it was worth, and then we hopefully satisfyingly resolved it.
Yeah, I was satisfied. You honestly gave more explanation resolution than Cowboy Bebop does to that sequence.
That's true.
So that was our look at regular show. Thank you again to Toby and Owen, who are still on the line with us, by the way. Toby Jones and Owen Dennis, can you talk about and remind our listeners what you're working on now and what projects of yours we should be watching right now or in the future?
Tune into OKKO Let's Be Heroes in any form you can find find it. If you can find it on television, that's great. It's on Hulu, that's good. It's on the Cartoon Network app and iTunes. OKKO Let's Be Heroes, it's a cartoon that I work on with a lot of talented people that I find to be very enjoyable. And I also made 6 episodes of a scripted podcast last year called Toby's Tall Tales that is very weird and dumb and fun. And that's me.
Hey, so I'm Owen Dennis, and I'm not as practiced at that yet. So I'm working on Infinity Train with a lot of people that are all working, and I see I'm not as practiced at that. Like, I don't know how you can do that. Everybody's working to make Infinity Train, and I'm the creator of Infinity Train, and it's going to come out sometime in 2019. I don't know when, but maybe someday in 2019. That's all that I know at this point. But when it comes out, it'd be really great if everybody watched it. And if you can't wait until then, you can also watch the pilot, which is on YouTube and various other online places where there's streaming video. So watch the pilot.
Awesome. Well, you both sound extremely busy, so thanks for taking 2 hours out of your day to talk about this really great episode of Regular Show.
I just like spending time with you.
Oh, let's do it more often.
OKKO episode. We got to get you and Ian on.
Yeah.
Totally will do that.
Agree
We're
on
on
air.
board. It's going to be great.
Oh, but he agreed on air.
Right,
Now he has to do it. So thanks again to Toby Jones and Owen Dennis. What a treat that we had them on this podcast. I am so amazed. Hopefully we'll have them back. Toby to do OKKO and Owen to do maybe Infinity Train when that comes out.
Yeah, this was the first time we've ever done a cartoon with folks who worked on it. So it was really special to do. I'd love to do that again in the future. That was very informative.
And it's a great way to kick off a whole new year of new opportunities and huge guests. I think we're going to get a lot of big guests in 2019, and we're looking forward to everything. And we hope that you are too. And if you want to support the show and the entire network of shows, go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, and that's where you can support the Talking Simpsons network. And if you give at the $5 level, you will get every episode of this podcast a week ahead of time and ad-free. And the same goes for our sister show, Talking Simpsons. At that $5 level, there's also all kinds of bonus podcasts, dozens and dozens of podcasts you've never heard that we've done over the past almost 2 years. Exclusive series like Talking Futurama, Talking Critic, interviews, so much more is going on there, including a monthly community podcast called Talk to the Audience, where we read your comments and talk about what's going on in our world and in the world of The Simpsons. But yeah, there's a lot going on, including a very, very new $10 tier in which we have a new monthly movie podcast. Isn't that right, Henry?
That's right. For folks who go to the premium $10 tier, not only will they get access to all the old premium videos we did back before, but also from November forward, we've been doing a different animated film each month in the What a Cartoon style. Me and Bob have already talked about Batman Mask of the Phantasm and Kiki's Delivery Service, all chosen via a poll with our $5 and up members. And you can hear both of those right now if you up to the $10 level, and you'll be able to hear January soon enough too. So please consider going on up to that level to check out all our great content.
That's right. You get a ton of great stuff for just $5 a month and even more for $10 a month. So please consider giving to the Talking Simpsons Network, and that is patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Please sign up as soon as you can. As for me, I am one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter. I'm Bob Servo on Twitter. And my other podcast is Retronauts. If you go to retronauts.com or look for Retronauts in your podcast machine, you'll find that we have a new episode every Monday and sometimes Friday. So yes, check it out. It's a classic gaming podcast. I think you'll like it a lot. Henry, how about you?
I've been Henry Gilbert, and you can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. There you'll see updates on every new episode of our podcast that go live, as well as new events that are going on in our lives, like our January 16th live show for our second year at SF Sketchfest. See our Talking Simpsons show live with our friends Allie Gertz and Julia Prescott. Plus, you'll get to see my thoughts on current cartoons as well, like OKKO. Whenever there's a new OKKO, I'm sure to share my opinions of those. So please check me out, HENEREYG. Thanks for joining us, and come back next week for the Batman Brave and the Bold episode, The Rise of the Blue Beetle.
We'll see you then.
Make it stop! All right, Hyperduck Extreme. Park variant. Ready for battle.